Douluo, I'm really not strong. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 Fishing, the Deep Sea Demonic Whale King. Driving the spaceship, Xian and Xue headed freely towards the western ocean point. The closer you get to the ocean, the humidity in the air becomes higher and higher, and even the breeze is so refreshing. Different from the fresh scent of grass exuding from the soil and vegetation in the forest. You can even feel the salty smell when the sea breeze blows. After staying in Qinghe City for a while, Xian stocked up on a large amount of vegetables and fruits, enough for several trucks. Xian refrigerated them all to use as food. There is never a shortage of meat in the ocean, but there is a shortage of vitamins. Even if the two of them arrive at Poseidon Island, they may not receive such good treatment. Therefore, Xian did not forget anything that should be prepared. He was accompanying someone to level up, so he just had to work hard, but he could not treat himself badly without any limit. On this day, the sky was still clear and cloudless. From a distance, the blue sky and the sea were connected without any conflict. Xian held the fishing rod in his hand, and the 50-meter long fishing line fell into the water. The fish float slowly moved westward with the spacecraft. Professionally speaking, this is just walking fish, but in practical terms, this is nonsense. Can you catch it? I've been burning for a long time. Seeing Xian's stubborn look, Xue, who was lying on the beach chair, yawned out of boredom, her slightly straightened figure revealing her perfect curves. Next to it, there was a barbecue grill with charcoal fire burning brightly. The platter of cut fruits such as watermelon has been prepared, and only the staple food is left. Originally, with their strength, catching a fish was a piece of cake. However, there are people who are so paranoid that they insist on eating the fish they catch, saying that such fish is more delicious. But she has no choice. Just wait. I promise, as long as you give me 5 more minutes, I will be able to catch a big fish. Xian waved his hand confidently. He really didn't believe it. In the past, catching fish was easier than drinking water in the garden. Could it be that all the fish in the sea have become sperm? Or maybe he is too tall and the 50-meter fishing line is not strong enough. Thinking about it, Xian let the spacecraft ascend another 40 meters and continued working hard at 10 meters in the air. Xue, you told me the same thing half an hour ago. What was the result? Fuck. Suddenly, a strong pulling force came from the fishing rod. Xian was immediately shocked and quickly started to reel in the fishing line. The force was so heavy that even Xian was a little unsteady on his feet, and the sea began to stir up waves and water. It looked like this fish was not very small. After some simple determination, Xian suddenly raised a big fish and was thrown out of the water. The body is nearly 3 meters long, with a blue-black back, silvery white belly, spindle-shaped body, double fins on the back, and a blue dorsal fin. Bluefin tuna. Seeing the fish, Xian's pupils shrank suddenly, and a huge surprise suddenly filled his heart. I'm a good boy. My luck is a blowout. It's just a matter of silence. It's a blockbuster. Just this one thing, in future generations, would be nearly 10 million. Xue was also overjoyed. She stood up from the recliner and looked at Xian with admiration. Low-key, I'll close the line right now. Smiling complacently, just when Xian was about to take action, a sudden violent shaking struck Xian. Xian was shocked and quickly grabbed the railing. What happened? Xue quickly came to Xian's side, looking a little panicked. The spaceship was parked in midair and would not be affected by the seawater at all. At that moment, there seemed to be some inexplicable energy coming from it. Soul Beast, noticing that the dark blue of the sea surface was getting darker and darker, which was somewhat different from the sea water in the distance, as if something was about to surface. Xian's pupils shrank suddenly, and he exclaimed. Ignoring the bluefin tuna, Xian quickly let the spacecraft take off. Suddenly, a huge wave hit, and the surrounding air began to become distorted under the impact of the water flow with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Suzanne quickly activated the defense system of the spacecraft, and a layer of blue light shield protected the entire body of the spacecraft point. But the spaceship is still a spaceship, and it cannot match the defense of a battleship. The blue defensive cover only resisted for a while, and was immediately destroyed by the water flow point like a spear piercing straight through. The fierce water flow directly penetrated the spacecraft. Fortunately, both Xue and Xian could fly, otherwise there would be no escape. Boom. The burning sparks were put out by the seawater with a pop, and the spacecraft also fell into the seawater. Suzanne and the other two didn't pay attention to this. They stared at the sea below, their expressions looking a little solemn. If I'm right, this guy should be the deep sea demonic whale king. Xian had already guessed the origin of the soul beast when he saw that it hadn't appeared yet, just that the shadow in the seawater was more than 100 meters away. There is only one such huge soul beast in the sea area. The water surged up like a fountain and spread out in all directions, like the back of a rock emerging from the water. Its huge body exceeded 200 meters. The giant fish's entire body was a sapphire-like color, and its two eyes were extremely huge, almost 3 meters long. However, the left eye was black, and it was obviously blind. This is a 100,000-year soul beast. Sensing the terror of the deep-sea demonic whale king, Xue swallowed hard. This guy has fought with Poseidon, and his eye was blinded by Poseidon. Suzanne explained, while taking Xue up to some heights. Looking at Suzanne and Xue with cold eyes, the deep-sea demon whale king seemed to understand what Suzanne was talking about, and his eyes suddenly turned blood red. Boom. The huge tail flashed with blue light, and suddenly it hit the water. Thousands of swords rushed straight up, each drop carrying a gem like blue light. It's not like a drop of water, but like a spear. Walk. With a fierce shout, Suzanne's third soul ring suddenly lit up. The two figures slanted up into the sky, their speed increased to the extreme, and they avoided the attack of the rain curtain. Fortunately, both of them have external soul-boned wings, which allow them to fly extremely fast. Also, if they fly upward, the speed of the rain curtain will slow down. In addition, Suzanne had opened the distance in advance, and was already in mid-air. If it were an ordinary person, it would be impossible to avoid the attack of a 100,000-year-old soul beast on this sea. Dear boy, this guy's really fierce. Seeing the rain of swords flying past, Suzanne also took a deep breath. His eyes gleaming pointed is worthy of being the mount of Poseidon. It really outshines glass. Fight or leave. Xue turned to look at Suzanne. Let's just watch the show here. Xian raised his lips slightly. Now that he has encountered this soul beast, how could he miss it like this? It would be a waste of natural resources. Suzanne took out a box from the storage ring with his right hand. Suzanne opened it and saw a huge black figure falling from the sky. It was a huge black dinosaur creature, more than 100 meters long, with a coral dorsal fin on its back. It was tall and strong, and its hands looked extremely powerful. Chapter 227 Godzilla vs the Deep Sea Demonic Whale King. Godzilla, teach him a lesson for me. Seeing Godzilla approaching the sea, Suzanne suddenly started shouting wildly. A nearly million-year-old soul beast, right? You were attacking me just now, right? Ocean, you are the boss, right? Damn it, you don't know how powerful the monsters on Earth are. Since when did you raise a soul beast? Seeing Godzilla appear, Xue's pupils shrank suddenly. This was the first time she had seen two such huge soul beasts. This is not a soul beast, but a monster from another world. It doesn't have any soul power in its body. Suzanne explained, then took Xue's little hand and led her to the aircraft. Lying in the bird's nest chair, quietly watching the battle that was about to begin below. Boom. Huge waves rose up, and Godzilla fell straight into the sea. His 170-meter body was submerged in the sea in an instant. The huge waves caused even the deep-sea demon whale king to move aside. Roar. A ferocious roar sounded, and Godzilla's head slowly emerged from the water. Just when Suzanne thought the battle was about to come, he saw Godzilla sinking again, swaying its tail like a water lizard, and swam away. Suzanne, PFFT, a mouthful of rock sugar snow pear squirted out, and Suzanne looked at the wandering Godzilla in disbelief. Damn it, where is your dignity as a monster? Are you just giving up without a fight? Roar, with an excited nasal sound, the deep-sea demonic whale king slowly sank to the bottom of the sea and chased Godzilla directly. Point for enemies that break into the territory. It must not let them leave. Ah. You sure you want some dog to teach this soul beast a lesson instead of letting him talk about escaping to attract the enemy? Xian Ringsu was also dumbfounded. She didn't expect this anxious dog to act like this. It was really surprising. Suzanne, this is indeed a serious question and I need to think about it too. In terms of attack power and defense, Godzilla and the deep sea demon whale king should be about the same, and they will never run away. Godzilla can carry a nuclear bomb. Although his skin can absorb energy, the energy explosion of the nuclear bomb is absolutely violent, which explains the problem. The power of a nuclear bomb is definitely comparable to that of a level 9 custom installed soul cannon, or even stronger to a certain extent. The power of the 9th level fixed soul cannon is equal to the attack power of Ultra Douluo. Compared with this, Godzilla's defensive power is at least at the level of Ultra Douluo. Even the ultimate Douluo couldn't hurt him. The demonic whale king of the deep sea has become a god in one line. Based on this comparison, the two should be facing each other. Why are you still running away? After thinking about it, Suzanne and Xian Ringsu chased after him to see what was going on. What a monster. It's not like he saw Ultraman and ran away with a hammer. Godzilla's swimming speed in the water is no slower than that of a submarine, but he is still no match for the demonic whale king of the deep. But the latter seemed to have no intention of catching up, and instead followed closely behind. After a while, Godzilla noticed an island ahead. He breathed a sigh of relief and swam quickly over. MMP. This sea area is too deep. Even if he wants to fight, he won't be able to stand. He saw that the opponent just now was also a giant. If this fight happened in the deep sea, he would suffer a loss and die. Feeling like he was standing on land, Godzilla felt relieved. Roar. Knowing that the deep sea demonic whale king could not come ashore, Godzilla allowed half of his body to be immersed in the seawater, stretched his arms slightly outward, and began to provoke the deep sea demonic whale king. Looking at the incoming deep sea demonic whale king, Godzilla's back suddenly began to glow. Boom. Suddenly, the atomic breath exploded with a blow from his mouth, like lightning, and the thick energy shockwave went straight towards the deep sea demonic whale king. As if aware of the danger, the deep sea demonic whale king screamed in a low voice, and at the same time, a bright blue light appeared on his body, and the power of the sea suddenly gathered on him. Brilliant energy waves burst out from it in an instant, hitting Godzilla's atomic breath directly. Boom. In an instant, there was a roar on the sea surface, as if the sky and the earth turned into white, and a dazzling light swept across the entire sea surface. Boom. The explosion followed by shocking waves, and in the waves, two huge figures also retreated straight out. With a bang, Godzilla was knocked down directly on the coast. Looking a little embarrassed, the deep sea demonic whale king was hit by the aftermath of the atomic breath and sank to the bottom of the sea. A layer of blood red filled the sea water. Seeing the deep sea demonic whale king actually sinking to the bottom of the sea, Suzanne's pupils shrank suddenly, but when he noticed the deep sea demonic whale king's activities, he knew that the matter was not over yet. Bang. After getting up from the ground, Godzilla's body was also filled with a layer of charred blackness. It seemed that the reactor was not working well with the energy, soul power, of this world. However, judging from the battle situation, Godzilla did have the upper hand this time. After all, the deep sea demonic whale king is a marine life fish. Even if it has high defense, it cannot withstand high temperatures, especially the temperature of its atomic breath is too high. Boom. Aware of Godzilla's strength, the deep sea demon whale king did not dare to attack easily. After the sea surface was silent for a while, suddenly a crystal curtain of water stretching for about 300 meters rushed toward Godzilla. Blue light surged and was filled with powerful energy fluctuations. Godzilla didn't dodge and thought of slapping it directly, shattering all the water curtains, but the seawater was like a sponge, and all its power was lost. Bang! A huge wave suddenly broke out and hit it directly on the coast, causing it to fall dizzy. Oh, I guess I can't fight anymore. Seeing the scene in front of him, Suzanne shook his head helplessly. He originally wanted to watch a big show, but he didn't expect this to be the result. Godzilla and the deep sea demon whale king are about the same size. One is good at land combat and the other is good at deep sea combat. Face to face combat is almost impossible. The deep sea demonic whale king is 200 meters long and its height alone is more than 100 meters. It requires a water depth of 150 meters, and this height, Godzilla is only 170 meters long, unless he shows up in the water and has a blind fight with the demonic whale king of the deep sea. Or, it can also go into the water to fight the deep sea demon whale king, the overlord of the ocean. Well, unless its brain is in a mess. Sure enough, there seemed to be a line on the coast, and neither of the two beasts approached rashly, but only carried out long-range attacks. With that look, I thought they were having fun. After fighting for a while, both sides were injured. The deep-sea demonic whale king surfaced, his cold eyes stained red with blood, and he took a deep look at Godzilla. Woo. He muttered unwillingly, and the deep-sea demonic whale king swayed his giant tail and slowly left the island, seemingly subdued. Chapter 228 Poseidon Island. Watching the deep-sea demonic whale king leave, Suzanne thought for a while and decided to forget it. Originally, he had planned to become a whale knight, but Ultraman's height, which is over 50 meters, is completely inadequate in front of this guy. So, it's better not to transform, so as not to discredit Ultraman. If you haven't fought him before, it would be really embarrassing. Godzilla, good job, let's go. Landing on Godzilla's back, Suzanne patted the big guy, who roared excitedly, and then slowly walked towards the deep sea. The movement was very gentle, like a leaf entering the water. Godzilla slowly climbed down, his back floating on the water, waving his tail, and heading towards the west point. Although Godzilla was hit by the demonic whale king of the deep sea just now, there were only some scratches on the surface, and it was not even considered an injury at all. However, the energy attack of the deep sea demonic whale king is indeed fierce. If Godzilla hadn't been thick-skinned, he might not have been able to withstand it. Rather than being injured, the deep-sea demonic whale king obviously suffered a big loss in this confrontation. With confrontation, Godzilla escorting them, no eyeless soul beasts finally appeared. Even the sea soul beasts that had lived for 10,000 years ran far away. No way, Godzilla is too big. The 10,000-year soul beast is only about 10 meters long, while others are 170 meters tall. You can solve the problem with just a snap of your fingers. After several days of traveling, a small island appeared in front of Suzanne. Seeing ships on the shore and some buildings vaguely visible on the island, Suzanne immediately smiled. Poseidon Island has finally arrived. Roar. Godzilla roared slightly, as if to remind him something. Suzanne understood immediately and jumped up with Xian Ringsu. Godzilla also stood up slowly. It seemed that he had touched the bottom of the sea. Suzanne landed on top of Godzilla's head, as if they had a tacit understanding. The seawater had just reached Godzilla's chest, and his ferocious head and steely shoulders were exposed out of the water. Godzilla walked slowly, and the seawater surged towards the shore. There were more and more great white sharks surrounding him, and they emerged from the water in a perfect streamlined shape, retreating as Godzilla moved, but none of them dared to attack. No way. This guy's too big, especially as he gets closer to the shore. His huge body is also exposed. This is like the huge difference in body size between humans and fish. If they hadn't been island protecting spirit beasts, they would have fled in all directions in order not to cause other panic. Suzanne put Godzilla into the container. Entering the village secretly, you don't need a gun, let alone a pistol. Ahem. Zao. Bay, I came here specifically to join Poseidon Island at the behest of Lord Poseidon. After looking around, Suzanne fixed his gaze on the largest demonic soul, the great white shark. He coughed twice and his expression suddenly became arrogant and serious. That's right, as the heir of Poseidon, he was here to receive the inheritance. How could he be so coquettish? Call out. Blue light flashed, and a figure appeared in front of Suzanne. It was a girl, standing with bare feet on top of a great white shark, with long grey blue hair hanging down her back, hanging directly to the ground. The grey blue eyes are deep and mysterious, the bridge of the nose is high, and the face is angular, giving him a unique look. However, the girl's face didn't have any joy at this moment, but instead showed anger. Lord Poseidon's name is something you can mention. Xiao Bei's face turned red, as if the faith in his heart had been tarnished, and he roared at Suzanne and the other two. The little girl looked really cute when she was angry. You are Poseidon's mount. You should know what this is, right? Without too much nonsense, Suzanne took out the vast sea universe cover. In an instant, blue bloomed, and blue airflow surged in from the surrounding sea. This is Lord Poseidon's trident. Sensing the familiar aura permeating the vast sea universe cover, Xiaobei's pupils shrank suddenly, and he couldn't help but exclaimed. As Poseidon's mount, she naturally knows about Poseidon's weapon, the trident, and the vast sea universe cover is the core source of it. Looking at the vast sea universe cover with fiery eyes, Xiaobei's body trembled slightly, and his face softened, feeling aggrieved and nostalgic. Now, this thing has recognized me as its master. Since I'm the descendant of Poseidon, I came here specifically to inherit the position of Poseidon. Holding the vast sea universe shield in his hand, Suzanne and Xian slowly landed on a great white shark, then stamped his feet. Don't be stunned, take me to the island. It's impossible to fly if you don't have the right skills to appear on the stage. How can you control the wind and rain on the island? The great white shark on the soles of his feet did not move. He looked at Xiaobei, nodded hesitantly, and then led Suzanne and the two of them slowly towards the shore. After getting to the island, Suzanne looked at the people in yellow clothes, and there was a person in purple clothes among them. Suzanne waved to that person. Take me to the seahorse sacred pillar. I'm ordered by the sea god to come here specifically to take part in the assessment. Poseidon? Hearing this, the purple clothed soul master was shocked. Just when he was about to reprimand, Xiaobei's voice suddenly rang out. Take him there. Although Xiaobei also had doubts in his heart, the core of the Poseidon trident would not lie, so let him test it for now. Yes. After hearing Xiaobei's words, the purple-clothed sea spirit master did not dare to neglect, and immediately led Suzanne and the two to the assessment site point. After walking through a forest, Suzanne and the two came to a pool point. The sea pool is very large. In the middle of the pool, there is a triangular platform with a strange stone pillar standing on it. The stone pillar has complex and mysterious patterns on it, and a seahorse sculpture is set up on the top point under the sacred pillar. A man in black clothes was sitting cross-legged on the ground, seeming to be comprehending something. Lord Kaber, please allow me to have a land soul master come to participate in the assessment. The voice of the purple-clothed soul master, wrapped in soul power, headed towards the middle of the sea, and reached the ears of seahorse Douluo. He stood up slowly, and looked towards the shore. Even though they were watching closely, Suzanne still felt an inexplicable pressure coming on him. To participate in the assessment, land soul masters must come to the sea on their own. Seahorse Douluo's body suddenly burst into blue light, and the seahorse holy pillar also lit up. The seahorse pattern on the top illuminated a curtain of light. The light curtain stretched 10 meters above the sea within the sea. Seahorse Douluo waved his arms, and the waves blocked the way forward. It seemed that, if he wanted to pass, he could only rush over. Shall I take you there? Turning to look at Xian, Suzanne smiled lightly. I don't need you to take care of me. Xian looked back arrogantly. She needed to hide her identity on the mainland, but she didn't need to hear point. As soon as he finished speaking, golden light suddenly burst out from Xian's body, while the seraph mark on his forehead shone. 6 snow-white wings spread out. Holy, cold, and noble. This is the Seraph Martial Spirit. Chapter 229. I also want to keep a low profile, but my strength doesn't allow it. Seraphim. Seeing Xian's martial spirit, Seahorse Douluo was immediately shocked. He obviously recognized the origin of this martial spirit, and his eyes became a little colder back then. Wuhandian invaded Poseidon Island, but in the end it was a disastrous defeat. How could Seahorse Douluo have a good look towards the intruders? However, Xian was here to participate in the assessment after all, and he couldn't take action directly. The blue halo bloomed again, and suddenly, the blocking water curtain surged up, 3 times more ferocious than before. There was no gap to dodge, and the water flow continued continuously. Seahorse Douluo narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked at the two of them quietly. Seeing Seahorse Douluo like this, Suzanne's face also condensed. He didn't expect that the other party would actually avenge himself. It was really not a joke. Come together. Glancing At Xian Ringsu, the soul rings on the soles of Suzanne's feet suddenly lit up. The third soul skill, long sky walk. Suddenly, Suzanne's figure shot out, followed by Xian Ringsu. A golden defensive shield enveloped the two of them, and they disappeared in the blink of an eye like arrows flew. The water curtain was bombarded by golden claws, creating a huge passage, and then a golden sword suddenly shot out, directly penetrating the passage point. Suzanne and the others walked directly through the waterway at absolute speed and slowly landed in front of Seahorse Douluo. Looking at the 100,000-year-old soul ring on the soles of Suzanne's feet, Seahorse Douluo was still in a daze at the moment, and even forgot to increase the difficulty for Suzanne and the other two. The fourth soul ring, 100,000-year soul ring. I'm in trouble. He's a titled Douluo who doesn't even have 100,000-year soul ring. But your fourth soul skill is already 100,000 years old. Seahorse Douluo felt a wild horse galloping past his body, crushing his fragile little heart. Can we start the assessment now? Knowing that Seahorse Douluo was deliberately trying to make things difficult for Xian Ringsu, Suzanne looked a little ugly and reminded him coldly. This grudge. I will remember you, young master. Wait. Awakened by Suzanne's words, Seahorse Douluo looked deeply at Suzanne and then glanced at Xian Ringsu. He didn't have any good feelings towards the successes of Wuhan Palace and was even hostile and hateful. Let them examine it. Suddenly, a soft voice sounded in his ears, and Seahorse Douluo's body trembled. Not paying attention to Suzanne and the other two, Seahorse Douluo bowed slightly to the depths of Poseidon Island, and then came to the front of the holy pillar with a pious face. Come up, one person. Blue light surged on Seahorse Douluo and the holy pillar. His voice was lukewarm, but his attitude was obviously a bit better than before. You come first. After pushing Xian Ringsu, Suzanne really wanted to see if this girl could inherit another Poseidon, but seeing Suzanne's expectant look, Xian Ringsu nodded and slowly took a few steps forward. Under the guidance of Seahorse Douluo, a ray of blue light suddenly shone on Xian Ringsu, and then the holy pillar began to change. The blue holy pillar quickly turned to yellow in an instant. Without stopping for a second, the yellow turned to purple, and the purple turned to black again. In the blink of an eye, red light bloomed in the holy pillar and shot straight up into the sky. Moreover, the red light of the holy pillar was still climbing. In the blink of an eye, it had passed 1/3, and it was already the top 8 exams, and it seems there is still room for improvement. When he saw that the red light was about to reach the top, it suddenly dropped one level and only reached 2/3 of the way. The corner of Suzanne's mouth twitched sharply. Sure enough, it was impossible for Poseidon to let the descendants of the angel god inherit the position of Poseidon. He really thought too much. 8 red square light curtains merged into Xian Ringsu's body, and there was an 8-pointed star pattern above her angel-shaped forehead. The top 8 exams are not bad. They can be used to level up. Seeing this scene, Suzanne couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and nodded with satisfaction. If you take the 9th Poseidon exam, you will get Poseidon affinity, and your purpose of bringing her to level up will be in vain. Suzanne was more willing to improve his affinity to the divine sea god by a few levels, but there was no other way. Training was too boring. Dear young lady, I was offended just now. I apologize for my rudeness. If you have any problems on Poseidon Island in the future, you can come to me. Seahorse Douluo recovered from the shock, and his attitude suddenly changed. Looking at Xian Ringsu, his eyes changed from hatred to respect, and he even saluted. You have nothing to think about. Seeing that there was no trace of confusion in Xian Ringsu's eyes, Suzanne raised an eyebrow and asked. He remembered that in the original work, everyone would be guided by Poseidon and issue orders. There was a voice that told me to complete the first 8 exams like you, and then nothing happened. Xian Ringsu shrugged and replied. Suzanne, Poseidon, are you so perfunctory? And it's also a spoiler. Didn't you tell me clearly that I'm at least the top 8 exams? Alas, you are not allowing me any room to be low-key. Hearing this, Seahorse Douluo also looked at Suzanne with a strange expression. Apparently Xian Ringsu's words revealed too much information. Ahem. I'm here, senior. You can do whatever you want. I promise not to cry out in pain. With His hands behind his back, Suzanne slowly walked forward and looked at the seahorse holy pillar in front of him, his eyes gleaming. I don't need the Poseidon at all. Don't give him Poseidon affinity, the level he needs now. If you give me the Poseidon, I will be in trouble with you. As if hearing Suzanne's voice, the seahorse holy pillar suddenly began to soar and immediately turned red, and the red became brighter and brighter, almost reaching its peak in the blink of an eye. Boom. Bright red light filled the whole body of the holy pillar, and an even more intense red light shot into the sky, and then 6 light pillars also appeared in the sky point at the intersection. A golden light bloomed. The golden light was warm and gentle. The entire Poseidon Island was bathed in this light, which was extremely sacred. Oh, I don't want to either. I want to keep a low profile, but my strength doesn't allow it. Seeing the golden light landing, Suzanne shook his head. Sometimes his talent is too strong, and he is helpless. Although Tangsen has dual martial souls, he is not weak now, especially with his current combination, the complete and strongest healing Jade Swan bloodline, the second most offensive Behemoth bloodline, completely fused, and some Azure Dragon bloodline. There are 2 external soul bones, 100,000 year soul ring, and 1 soul bone each. I don't have enough talent. I'll make it up later. Call out. The golden light fell, and 9 square light curtains appeared in front of Suzanne, with golden words on them. Whoosh, whoosh, square rays of light were like meteors, pouring into Suzanne's forehead one by one. Huge information came. Suzanne sat cross-legged on the ground, and accepted the information. The movement on the seahorse sacred pillar also made the whole island shake. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Poseidon Assessment. Are you Xian Daoliu's granddaughter? A gentle voice came to her ears, and Xian Rinxu immediately turned her head to look. When she saw the person coming, her eyes could not help but show envy. The person who came was a woman, wearing a red dress, with a beautiful and bright complexion, and her dark blue eyes were as clear as gems, with a face that had a sense of vicissitudes of life, noble, elegant and warm. Seeing her, Xian Rinxu felt as if she was nourished by the spring breeze. In her right hand, she also held a 3-meter golden scepter with magic patterns on it, and a golden gem inlaid on the tip. Big offering. Seeing the woman arriving, Seahorse Douluo bowed slightly and saluted quickly. Xian Daoliu's granddaughter, Xian Rinxu, has met my senior. Knowing who the visitor was, Xian Rinxu did not dare to neglect him. After all, this person was a top expert like her grandfather. After an old friend, there is no need for such courtesy. Bosaixi nodded. Although she didn't have much affection for Xian Daoliu, as a person of the same generation, and besides, the other party had pursued her before. Therefore, there is not much rejection towards Xian Rinxu. As for Wuhan Palace's previous attack on Poseidon Island, Xian Daoliu didn't know about it, otherwise he wouldn't have let them die. They understand the respective strengths of the 3 of them better than anyone else, and will not do such friction. After a brief exchange of greetings, Bosaixi turned his eyes to Suzanne, with unconcealable excitement in his eyes. He is now undergoing the 9th Poseidon exam, which is the highest test. He brought you here, so you must know what it means, right? After saying that, Bosaixi looked at Xian Rinxu. Xiaobei had already told her everything, and knew that Suzanne had the core of the trident in his hand. This was probably what Poseidon meant. After waiting for hundreds of years, the wait was finally here, and she could breathe a sigh of relief. Xian Rinxu nodded, with uncontrollable excitement on her face. This is the inheritance of Poseidon. As long as Suzanne passes it, he can inherit the throne. It's a pity that his current cultivation level is a little low. It's not easy to pass the Poseidon test. You'd better be prepared, Bosaixi reminded. She could see through Suzanne's cultivation level at a glance. He was only a level 45 soul sect. With his current age, it was already good to have this level of cultivation. However, the 9th Poseidon examination will not reduce the difficulty, just because the level is low. As it should be, it will still go on, otherwise it would not be the 9th Poseidon examination. We understand. Xian Rinxu smiled and nodded, not too worried about what Bosaxi said. There was nothing she could do about it. Her husband was so awesome. Even though he was just taking the Poseidon test, he still couldn't get it. After a while, Xian slowly opened his eyes. The golden trident pattern was imprinted on his forehead, making him look a little more noble. However, in terms of the information received, it is basically nothing. It is more of an understanding of the ocean. Junior. Xian has met Senior Bosaxi. Looking directly at Bosaxi, Xian did not salute, but just said hello blankly, which seemed a little impolite. As for the name, of course he uses his old name. Anyway, he has used this pseudonym before, so he is not afraid of revealing his secret Zukingism, and he is Xian. That's the simple truth. It seems that you know a lot about the rules of Poseidon Island. Seeing that Xian was not polite, Bosaxi was slightly stunned, and said in surprise, "This junior is very clear about the meaning of the 9 tests of Poseidon. If you salute, it will be disrespectful to Poseidon." Xian explained plausibly point. Although Bosaxi is the great worshipper of Poseidon Island, in the final analysis, he is still a believer of Poseidon point. At least he has the title of Poseidon's successor staring at his head now. In the future, he may be like brothers in will have eternal life. So how can he be so groveling point? When he entered the island, his strength was about to explode. He must not give in at this time. Gaia, you will arrange the 2 of them. Except for the Poseidon assessment, try to meet their other requirements. Hearing this, Bosaxi stared at Xian for a while, then threw a word to Seahorse Douluo and left. As Bosaxi left, Xian suddenly felt the pressure recede and couldn't help but wipe the sweat from her forehead. As expected of her ultimate Douluo, he almost exhausted all his soul power with just a slight temptation. "Are you okay?" Noticing Xian's strange behavior, Xian Rinxu quickly held his arm and asked worriedly, "It's okay, it's just that the soul power was consumed too much." Xian shook her head. Bosaxi had obviously left some room just now. Otherwise, with just a look, she could have killed her normal self at this moment. 2. Distinguished guests, who are going to Seahorse City with me, I will arrange your next affairs on Poseidon Island. Seeing Xian's state, Seahorse Douluo also knew what happened and smiled slightly. "No need, the 2 of us can just build a house on the beach by ourselves, won't bother Senior. Since the 2 of us are here for training, naturally we have to handle everything ourselves. Otherwise, this opportunity will be in vain." Xian quickly waved his hand and refused. Even though Caber invited him again and again, he still did not change his original intention. That's right. They came out to experience living in other people's houses and eating other people's food. What does this mean? He could just build a 3-story villa and he would never bother anyone else. Okay, but if you need anything, you can call me at any time. Seeing that Xian was so stubborn and principled, Seahorse Douluo stopped insisting. It happened that the city lord's palace had limited space. After leaving the Seahorse sacred pillar, Xian lay on the flying soul guide and brought Xian Rinxu to the beach. "Aren't you going to live in the city?" Seeing Xian return to the coast, Xiaobei's figure appeared again, and he was shocked when he saw the mark on Xian's forehead. "The 2 of us are used to living alone. So as not to disturb other people's purity, we decided to come to the beach and plan to build a house by ourselves." Xian explained. "That's it." Xiaobei nodded without knowing why. Looking at Xian and the 2 of them, they always felt a little silly. Boom. Just when she was about to ask to help build the house, suddenly, a huge water villa fell from the sky and landed on the coast point. Suddenly, the atmosphere solidified. Looking at the luxurious villa in front of him, Xiaobei, "I seem to understand why they live alone. Xiaobei, go get us some king crab, lobster and other food." Xian couldn't help but say. On the first day of arrival, it was natural to recharge their batteries. After floating on the sea for so long, they were both land soul masters, so they were still a little uncomfortable. Chapter 231 Time Travel, Poseidon's Light. After a day at the beach, Xian took Xian Rinxu into the mainland, randomly found a sea soul master, and asked him to take them to the forbidden area. The content of the previous assessment was almost the same. His first assessment was also about traveling through the Poseidon's light. However, he only needs to break through the 200th level, and Xian Rinxu has exactly the same mission as him, which is also the 200th level. Level 200 was more than 100 levels less than Tang San's level 333, but it was also not easy for Suzanne. No matter what, he is only a level 45 soul sect now. After an hour and a half of traveling, Suzanne and Xian Rinxu arrived at the forbidden area of Poseidon Island. The first thing you see is a lake 200 meters wide. In the center of the lake stands a mountain peak, with long stairs leading directly to the top of the mountain. At the top, there is a square palace that looks like white jade. A gentle and solemn light shines down from the top of the mountain, like the baptism of holy light, which invigorates people. The sea spirit master simply explained a few words, looked at him with envy and pity, and slowly left. Next, we estimate we will have to stay here for a while. Looking at Poseidon Mountain in front of him, Suzanne's eyes revealed a firm look. He turned to look at Xian Rinxu and reminded him, to put it bluntly, with his current strength, it is almost impossible to reach level 200 with strength. Not to mention 200, even if it's level 50, that's enough. After all, with Tang San's cultivation at that time, the first test could only reach around 50 levels, and his full strength would probably only be around 70 or 80 levels. That's right, Suzanne didn't intend to cheat this time. He just wanted to exercise his physical fitness. If you don't have a strong body, you will definitely be bullied by your wife in the future. Only if you are strong and tough enough can your family status be maintained. Taste carefully. You can't use offensive soul skills here. You can only rely on auxiliary skills. If you can't resist the pressure, you should retreat immediately. Understand? Suzanne reminded. Xian Rinxu nodded seriously, and the two of them immediately passed through the ring sea and arrived at the foot of Poseidon Mountain. Let me try it first. Looking at the long stairs in front of him, Suzanne took a deep breath, and his martial soul was instantly released. A pair of wings that looked like glazed jade. Suzanne's own skills, except for healing, do not have any enhanced auxiliary skills. Unlike the 7 monsters, who have the 9 treasure glazed tile tower, this will also greatly increase the difficulty for the two of them to climb the ranks. Be careful. Although she knew nothing would happen to Suzanne, Xian Rinxu still warned her and clenched her hands out of instinctive worry. Suzanne ignored it, held his breath and concentrated, and slowly stepped on the first step of the stairs. In an instant, mountain-like pressure came from all sides of the body, as if it was going to flatten him, and Suzanne's expression suddenly changed. In this first quarter, I'm afraid I need a soul master to be able to compete. Taking a deep breath, Suzanne climbed up the steps faster, reaching the 20th step in the blink of an eye. Every time you go up a level, the pressure will increase, and every time you reach 10 levels, the pressure will rise sharply again. When he reached the 20th level, Suzanne's face was already sweating profusely. The pressure here was enough to crush any soul sect. If he hadn't been physically strong, he might not have been able to bear it at all. Taking difficult steps, Suzanne slowly stood on the 21st step. The pressure that suddenly increased sharply made his body tremble slightly. Soul King level. Suzanne realized that the pressure on this step was probably related to the Soul Master level. Without the training of the Poseidon's light, even a genius monster can only reach a dozen levels in the Soul Sect realm. Soul King corresponds to level 20 or above, while Soul Emperor is level 30. And if you want to break through to level 200, in addition to training here day and night, I'm afraid you also need at least the Soul Saint level. Will you upgrade yourself to 25 levels in 1 year? Thinking about it, Suzanne himself felt that it was impossible. Unless he could spend money to buy cultivation or take drugs tomorrow, it would be absolutely impossible. However, since he knew it was impossible, why did the old guy Poseidon set such a difficult question, requiring a full 200 levels? Could it be that the achievement is trying to make me give up before trying to cheat? Shaking his head, Suzanne didn't think about it anymore and continued to move upward. Level 22, level 23, level 25. Suzanne finally stopped. The sweat on his face was like mung beans. His whole face was extremely red, and his feet were trembling with spasms level 25. This is the maximum that his body can bear now. But it's definitely not the limit he can reach. A green rim with golden light bloomed from the wings. The wings slowly folded in, and the light group surrounded Suzanne's entire body. The golden light of Poseidon's light seemed to be weakened by the sharp golden light formed by golden behemoth's bloodline. The green light continuously absorbed the energy existing around Suzanne. Looking at this posture, it seemed that even a small part of the energy of the Poseidon's light had been absorbed. Of course, it is only the part that has been weakened by the resistance of behemoth's bloodline. After all, the power of Poseidon contained in Poseidon's light cannot be absorbed by the Emerald Swan's ability. His vitality and soul power had recovered somewhat, and with the attached soul bone resisting the pressure from the outside world, Suzanne suddenly felt much more relaxed. Bang bang bang. At the same time, Suzanne felt that the blood in his body was also flowing faster, and his heart was beating powerfully. Boom. It seemed as if some shackles had been opened, and a powerful force surged from his body. With a rush of energy, Suzanne suddenly accelerated and climbed directly to the 30th step. The original pressure came back again, and Suzanne's face suddenly turned pale. Suzanne's body staggered and trembled. His steps became weak, and a clear watermark on the soles of his feet became larger and larger. This was the sweat flowing from his body. After traveling through time, this was the first time he had suffered so much pain, and it was also the first time he had worked so hard. That hearty feeling, I have to say, it's really great. Below, seeing Suzanne's trembling appearance, Xian felt a sore nose and felt extremely distressed. She wanted to ask him to stop, but in the end, she still covered her mouth tightly. Looking at the 31st level ahead, a huge watershed, Suzanne gritted his teeth and slowly stretched out the golden behemoth's claws. It is true that the golden behemoth claw has all attack attributes, and it cannot increase the body's defense when used, but after all, it is still a claw. Click. The sharp claws were clenched tightly on the 32nd step. As expected, Suzanne did not feel the strong pressure from the 32nd step under the golden behemoth's claws stab. With a sudden force, the claws rubbed against the steps and fireworks exploded. As scratches appeared one after another, Suzanne's body was also brought to the 31st level by the force of inertia. Boom. Chapter 232 Poseidon's Light, Practice. Boom. Strong pressure swept down from above, and Suzanne was knocked away directly. His head was shaken, and he fell towards the sea. Aha. Seeing Suzanne like this, Xian suddenly jumped into the air and caught him. With tears in her eyes, Xian face was full of distress. Fool, if you can't get up, you can't get up. You are so tough. Xian bit her pink lips lightly, blaming Suzanne for her recklessness. There is always something you have to try, otherwise it would be too boring. With a slight smile on her lips, Suzanne looked at Xian's worried look, but her heart felt warm. Ahem. There's no one here. You can hold her for as long as you want. I don't mind. Suzanne's face was slightly red. Her hands were wrapped around Xian's waist, and her head was buried in her arms. Stop making trouble and come down quickly. It was as if there were ants crawling across my heart, and I felt that my chest was itchy and numb. Xian shouted with a hot face. Ahem. Then let me come down. Knowing that now was not the time to do this, Suzanne moved his head slightly, and then walked down honestly. The look of that good baby made Xian feel angry and ashamed. This man is so shameless. Okay, you don't need to pay attention to me, just go and try. Xian waved his hand, then sat down cross-legged on his own. While recovering, he also checked the situation inside his body. Knowing that Suzanne was spending a lot of money, Xian didn't bother him, and turned his eyes to the steps. While curious, his eyes also revealed a fighting spirit. She has 10 levels of soul power higher than him, so she can't lose to this guy. In terms of spirit quality, Xian's seraphim spirit is definitely a god level spirit. Especially after merging with angel blood, even the externally attached soul bone falcon wings began to turn into martial soul wings. becoming a true 8-winged angel. In addition to the angelic realm, the soul skills are absolutely powerful, rather than the half attack and half auxiliary martial arts like Suzanne. Even at the same level, there is no doubt that Xian Rinxu's ability to compete with Poseidon's light is stronger than Suzanne's. As for fighting ability, Suzanne had never fought Xian Rinxu, and he was reluctant to beat his wife. What? You said he can't beat him? Alright, come to think of it, he really couldn't beat Xian Rinxu. After all, his offensive soul skills are only the first soul skill and the fourth soul skill, or the soul bone skill. Although the attack power of the 100,000-year-old soul ring and the attached soul bone is indeed very good, skipping battles is not a problem, but Xian Rinxu's strength can also transcend levels, especially the angel realm. Although she does not have a martial arts soul, the power of the angel realm cannot be fully exerted, but it is also extremely restrictive. As expected, Xian Rinxu climbed to the 21st step easily. When reaching the 25th level, Xian Rinxu also had a lot of sweat on his forehead, and it seemed that he was under a lot of pressure. The second soul skill on the soles of her feet also lit up, and a golden shield guarded her side, which made her expression soften slightly. After climbing 5 steps again, Xian Rinxu's figure was trembling slightly, her face turned red due to the intense pressure, and she was sweating profusely. Looking at the 31st step in front of her, Xian Rinxu took a deep breath, gritted her teeth, and controlled her trembling feet that were stopped in midair. Boom. Following Suzanne's example, Xian Rinxu's 8 wings also completely enveloped her, resisting external pressure. At the same time, she exerted force on her right foot and stepped on the 31st step. Level 31. Exactly the same as Suzanne. After being nourished by the attached soul bone and angel blood, Xian Rinxu's martial soul wings have also improved a lot in their resistance to pressure. Although it is not as good as Suzanne, its defense is not low either. Standing firmly on the 31st step, Xian Rinxu took a deep breath, and there was an unprecedented fighting spirit in her eyes. She also wanted to see where her limit was at this moment. Level 34. Boom. Xian Rinxu's body was so compressed that she couldn't lift it up and was struggling to move, but she still had no intention of giving up. A layer of golden halo was released from her body, which was the realm of angels. It was able to bring 10% of all round blessings to Xian Rinxu. Under the true form of Wuhan, it's only 30%, while the golden light in the angel realm brings blessings to Xian Rinxu. It also slightly purifies the energy of Poseidon's light, which is similar to Suzanne's emerald swan. Although Poseidon's light is powered by Poseidon, it also contains energy from the sea, which can purify and absorb part of it to reduce stress even with the blessing of the angel realm. Xian Rinxu only reached level 37 in the end, and was finally knocked away by the Poseidon's light. Then, a figure rose from the ground, and caught her directly. I just said, let me hold you next time. Seeing Xian Rinxu's face turning pale and sweating profusely, Suzanne felt a little distressed, and couldn't help but tease her. Who wants you to hug me? Xian Rinxu said angrily, but her arms couldn't help but wrap around Suzanne's waist. Suzanne, sure enough, women's words cannot be trusted, especially beautiful women. This Poseidon's light is extremely beneficial to practice. We have to come here to practice every day, even go to the steps to practice. As he said that, Suzanne's face became serious. He looked towards the highest Poseidon temple and seemed to see a shadow watching here. Xian Rinxu nodded. She could feel the emptiness of her soul being squeezed. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Rather than climbing the ladder, it is better to say that we are challenging our own limits step by step and surpassing them step by step. When the condition recovers, let's continue. Xian is also very motivated. This time he does not plan to cheat, but really relies on his own strength to conquer the Poseidon's light. When I came to this world, it was the first time I encountered something so challenging but not dangerous. If I didn't cherish it, wouldn't it be too boring? In this way, Suzanne took Xian Rinxu to live under Poseidon Mountain. The two of them would spare half a day every day to challenge the Poseidon's light. After climbing the steps, he then practiced on the steps. To polish his soul power, Suzanne also made a book of exercises and practiced with Xian Rinxu. When he was tired, he would play games and slowly adapt to the pressure point from the first 10 meters of pressure training, to 20 meters, to 30 meters. The place that was originally Suzanne's limit has now become a stepping stone, allowing him to reach a higher level. The system refreshes products every month, but Suzanne basically holds back. He doesn't bother to buy products that are useless to the world or useless to his own strength point, just like spiritual skills and spells. Buying them is a waste of money. There is no way to practice in this world, so it is better to keep the money. Well, it's definitely not, because it's too expensive. Exclamation mark. Chapter 233. Do you want to eat? Half a year later, Suzanne once again came to the foot of Poseidon Mountain shrouded in Poseidon's light. But this time, he didn't come to challenge, but to wait for Bosexy to appear. After half a year of training, the essence of the 3 immortal herbs in his body was finally fully integrated into his body. With practice, his soul power also broke through to level 50. In other words, he can already obtain the God-given soul ring. Similarly, there is Xue, who is at level 60 steadily and has not improved at all. I will integrate this card into my body later and turn your 6th soul ring into a 100,000-year soul ring. Suzanne gave Xue a title Douluo cultivation experience card and reminded him a God-given soul ring is equivalent to receiving a prize. If you don't cheat well, how can you get more? The 6th soul ring, 100,000 years. Hearing this, Xue was immediately speechless. She didn't know how to express her inner confusion, so she could only look at Suzanne stupidly. Just listen to me. Holding Xue's little hand, Suzanne gently rubbed her smooth palm with his fingers and reminded him, Xue didn't ask any more questions and nodded silently, because she had already seen Bosexy coming. In the Poseidon Island assessment, when purple level and above examinees encounter bottlenecks, they will receive Poseidon's blessing, a God-given soul ring. You only have one chance. Are you ready, Bosexy looked at Xue and finally focused on Suzanne. She smiled slightly, as if the entire circular sea was rippled. You come first. Suzanne took Xue's hand and pushed her forward. Cheating is fun for a while, but who knows if I can continue to cheat. Let Xue improve her cultivation first. Seeing Xue step forward, Bosexy waved her arm slightly, and a golden bead landed on Xue's head. Then, it turned into golden light and dispersed, falling on Xue. Suddenly, huge energy surged in, just like the huge pain when absorbing the soul ring. Xue gritted her teeth and sat down, while a healthy blush appeared on his face. Xue's martial soul and soul ring also rippled. Tick tick tick. Small drops of sweat gradually gathered into beads of sweat, sliding down Xue's cheeks and evaporating directly on the ground, showing how powerful the surrounding soul power was. Ahem. After a while, Suzanne coughed suddenly when he noticed that the golden mist began to change. Bosexy raised her eyebrows and looked over, filled with doubts. But Xue understood, and a red card dissipated inside her sleeve. Boom. Unable to control the huge energy emerging from his body, Juju's soul power suddenly burst out, and even Bosexy was shocked. A layer of faint golden light gushed out from her body, protecting herself and Suzanne at the same time. Originally, she wanted to use a soul tool to carry it, but she didn't expect Bosexy to take such good care of herself. Suzanne suddenly raised his eyebrows. Thank you, sister. Seeing Suzanne's unsparing look, Bosexy turned slightly red and glared at him angrily. The two of them have been here for half a year and have disturbed her a lot. Especially, in addition to practicing every day, she is here to show affection. How can she, or 1,000-year-old virgin, be pitiful and endure such torment? If she hadn't thought that he was the descendant of Poseidon, she would have slapped him and left the island. Elder sister, are you so young? Ignoring Suzanne's deliberate teasing, Bosexy turned her attention to Xue. Feeling that her soul power and physical fitness were sharply strengthening in all aspects, especially her soul power, and she had even reached the level of title Douluo in the blink of an eye, Bosexy also looked horrified. How did you do it? Bosexy looked at Suzanne, her eyes full of surprise. With her intelligence, She knew what the coughing sound just now meant after a moment's thought. That was the signal being conveyed. However, the means to give the Soul King the fighting power of a titled Douluo were indeed incomparable, and even she, as an ultimate Douluo, could not do it. Wedi is just a small trick. I can't believe that my sister is so surprised. So, Xian waved his hand nonchalantly, but everyone could see the complacency on his face. There is no way. Cheating is fun. Bosexy, you are said to be fat, but you are still out of breath. By the way, sister, do you still have lunch today? Suzanne raised her eyebrows and asked as if she thought of something. You can do whatever you want. I can do it. Hearing this, a trace of uneasiness flashed across Bosex's face, and she couldn't help but wave her hands. Looking cold and distant, points Suzanne. Look at his speaking skills. He looks like someone who has been here before. Then, I'll prepare more lotus seed soup. Suzanne replied with a knowing smile. Hearing this, Bosex's face turned slightly red, and she subconsciously wanted to nod, but in the end she stopped and pretended not to care. Sure enough, there is no woman in this world that he can lick. Seeing Bosex's expression of wanting to welcome her but refusing, a feeling of loneliness as a master suddenly surged into Suzanne's heart. In the past 6 months, he successfully conquered 2 female fans, proving how important it is to master a craft in another world. Oh, what? You said gods don't need to eat. That's because people eat too much and don't bother to eat anything that doesn't taste good. I have a unique skill that will overwhelm the gods and Buddhas in the sky. New Oriental alien endorsement, especially since he has absorbed the cooking skills of various cities. His current level is really unrivaled in the world. Ahem. I feel a little dizzy after eating awesome. Point on the other side, as the title Douluo's cultivation increased, the golden color around Xian Rinxu suddenly turned red, and then slowly condensed into a soul ring, which fell outside Xian Rinxu's black soul ring. The 6th soul ring, the 100,000-year soul ring, is done. Sister, you can come as you like. I'm already lying down. I won't cry out in pain. Seeing that Xian Rinxu had not woken up, Suzanne slowly sat down and looked at Bosexy with high spirits. I was wrong. We had something to discuss, so don't do anything. I'm still a virgin. This is indecent. Noticing that Bosex's eyes were narrowed and her face was as cold as frost, Suzanne's heart skipped a beat and she quickly waved her hands to beg for mercy. As soon as the flirtatious words came out, Suzanne became even more desperate. He was used to joking with Xian Rinxu, but he had no control over his words. After staying on Poseidon Island for many years, no one would dare to say this in front of her. Bosexy suddenly turned red and stared at Suzanne with a cold gaze, as if he was considering whether to kill this guy with a knife. Lord Poseidon, how could you fall in love with this guy? Boom. Suzanne's pupils shrank suddenly, and his body was directly knocked away by a huge force of soul. Suzanne was like a cannonball, thrown high, then fell heavily, and plunged into the ring sea with a thud. Chapter 234. Suzanne, I'm always the one who gets hurt. It's just a joke. Why is it so violent? The soul power dried all the water stains on his body, and Suzanne came to the shore with a helpless face, feeling that the other world was not fun at all. Especially with this kind of old maid who has been separated for thousands of years, who can kill someone just by making a joke. Okay, come quickly, I'm waiting to refresh the soul ring. Seeing Bosex's cold gaze glance at her again, Suzanne waved her hands helplessly and slowly sat down cross-legged as she spoke. A titled Douluo was immediately arranged, and Suzanne quickly controlled the soul power in his body so as not to disturb Xian Rinxu. You are deceiving Poseidon. Seeing Suzanne do this again, Bosexy gritted her silver teeth and snorted coldly. What is cheating? I get the soul ring based on my own ability. Is this still wrong? Hearing this, Suzanne immediately became angry, as this was his own fault. If you have the ability, ask future examiners to prevent them from using soul power, martial souls, and soul bones, and see how many years of soul rings they can get. You're just messing around. Bosex's face suddenly turned dark. How can we see where the potential lies based solely on physical resistance? Come on. Poseidon isn't even angry. Why are you angry? Suzanne glared at Bosexy angrily, and then closed her eyes. Seeing this, Bosexy bit down and finally took out a golden bead from her sleeve. The beads fell on Suzanne's head and then turned into golden mist. For those who didn't know, they thought Suzanne was about to become a Buddha. There wasn't much pain. It was only at the back that Suzanne felt some pain. He didn't insist on anything too much. Even if he tried his best, Poseidon wouldn't be able to give him a million-year soul ring point then. A red soul ring was seen wrapped around Suzanne's red soul ring point, the 5th soul ring, 100,000-year soul ring. Like Xue, Suzanne did not wake up immediately, but felt the message of the 100,000-year soul ring. Seeing Poseidon sending out 200,000-year soul rings at once, Bosexy couldn't help but feel a little distressed, especially for a brat like Suzanne. Boom. Suddenly, a bright golden light burst out from Suzanne's body, and even Bosexy couldn't help being startled. Looking closely, he saw that Suzanne's whole body was filled with golden light, and bright red energy and blood surged out of Suzanne's body. The golden mist and the roiling blood dragon are the most realistic portrayal of Suzanne at this moment. Golden behemoth's sharp claws and martial souls were also released involuntarily, and a strong and ferocious roar exploded, shaking the mountains. It was as if some wild beast was about to emerge from Suzanne's body. Senior, what's wrong with him? Xian. Rinxu was also awakened. Seeing Suzanne's strange changes at this moment, she couldn't help but feel worried. I don't know, but he seems to contain a powerful bloodline power, as if he is about to be awakened. Bosexy shook her head. It was the first time she had ever encountered Suzanne's changes at this moment, especially the power of blood. Even she felt frightened. The energy and blood all over his body slowly gathered on Suzanne's right hand, as if being pulled. Then 2 blood red soul rings were embedded in Suzanne's golden behemoth claws, and both Bosexy and Xian Rinxu were stunned. Wow, I knew that old guy Poseidon wouldn't play tricks on me for no reason. After receiving the information from various parts of the body, Suzanne burst into laughter. No wonder he was level 45 and the ladder he climbed was as high as 200. He finally understood. Ha ha ha, boom. Just when Suzanne was overjoyed, a golden light suddenly shot out from the Poseidon temple. The same scene, the same arc, even the landing point. With a pop, Suzanne fell into the sea again, and the scene was very embarrassing. Slowly spitting out a mouthful of seawater, Suzanne's face was as dark as ink. Poseidon, your godhead is gone. After this time, Suzanne finally understood that when you are too good, gods will be jealous of you. Slowly swimming up from the circular sea, Suzanne lay down on the beach on the shore and suddenly wanted to fall asleep just like that. Kind people will always be bullied. Alas, if Poseidon Island wasn't useful, he would have demolished it sooner or later, so that the old man Poseidon would never be able to find an heir. And he would be bored to death by working on the Poseidon throne. Curse him to never find an heir. When I leave Poseidon Island, I will erase the trident mark on my head and see if I will piss you off. Ah, you okay? At this time, Xian Rinxu came over. While asking, she was also using her soul power to bake Suzanne's wet clothes. It's okay, it's just that the power of blood in the body is too strong, and it has been converted into a soul ring. Suzanne shook his head and then slowly got up. Seeing that Bosexy was gone, he couldn't help but ask, where is she? As soon as these words came out, Xian Rinxu's eyes suddenly narrowed. You seem to be particularly concerned about her? The voice was lukewarm, and there was no emotion at all. What do you mean? Suzanne looked slightly stunned and looked at Xian Rinxu in confusion. He blinked his big eyes as he spoke, his face full of confusion. HMPH. It's nothing. Xian Rinxu turned her head to the side with a stern face, as if she didn't want to pay attention to Suzanne. Seeing Xian Rinxu like this, Suzanne was stunned, and then understood immediately. Jealous? She hugged Xian Rinxu into her arms. Looking at the sullen beauty in front of her, Suzanne pinched her cheek and said with a teasing smile. He didn't have any other thoughts about Bosexy, especially since Xian Rinxu has sacrificed so much for other beauties. He only sees her as beautiful and has absolutely no other thoughts. I won't be jealous of you. Her dimples were stained with red clouds, like peach blossoms in warm spring. Extremely beautiful. Xian Rinxu pushed Suzanne to welcome her but refused, pretending to be stubborn. The blushing face was slightly charming, wholly yet alluring, and Suzanne's heart trembled. Aha! Noticing the change in Suzanne's eyes, Xian Rongsu was startled and quickly pulled away, breaking away from Suzanne's embrace. Daughter-in-law, you are becoming more and more unbehaved. Feeling disappointed, Suzanne sighed helplessly, suppressed the evil fire in his heart, and slowly stood up. I won't talk to you anymore. I'm going back to take a shower first. Xian Rongsu stuck out her tongue nonchalantly, but when she glanced at Suzanne, her cheeks suddenly turned red, and she quickly returned to the villa. Suzanne? By the way, is this implying something? Based on his current state, he obviously knew that he needed to take a bath, so the purpose of the young wife was obvious. That's right, she's lusting after her body again. Snort. He was so smart that he had already seen through it. Chapter 235 Challenge again. Poseidon's light. In the early morning, a ray of sunlight shone through the curtains. Suzanne squinted his eyes, but he still couldn't block the slight pain caused by the dazzling sunlight. Suzanne slowly opened his sleepy eyes, seeing a hazy golden light, and glanced to the side, rubbing her eyes. Just when Suzanne was about to get up and practice, she suddenly stopped. Seeing Xian Rongsu with her bare shoulders, messy golden hair stuck to her flushed cheeks, and a sweet smile with the corners of her mouth raised slightly, Suzanne's face suddenly turned red. The bed was in chaos at the moment, with two figures wrapped in golden wings, and there was still a smell of spring love in the room. Fortunately, this is in another world, otherwise I would be directly executed at the highest level. Lying down honestly, Suzanne let Xian Rongsu rest on his arm, pretending that nothing happened. His face was a little smug, as if he was happier than if he had won the world. At noon, the two finally woke up again. Suzanne was awakened by Xian Rongsu. Ah, you happy now? Seeing Suzanne's silly and happy look, Xian Rongsu rolled her eyes at him charmingly, and a mature and charming look of a woman appeared on her holy and noble face. What did you call me? Suzanne raised an eyebrow and pretended to be angry. Husband. Xian Rongsu's face turned red. She huddled into the quilt and let out a bone-crushing murmur. This is right, Sue. Xian also hid under the quilt, looking at the blushing and charming beauty in front of her. She suddenly smiled. No, give me a break. Seeing Suzanne's fiery smile, Xian Rongsu pushed his chest with both hands and quickly expressed her ejection. Her cheeks were as hot as red clouds. Good. Suzanne was naturally considerate and pressed down on Xian Rongsu's arm slightly. The latter trembled suddenly and quickly retracted. After a while, the room became noisy again. The river crab god has arrived. By the time the two of them got up, it was already noon on the third day. The two looked at each other, neither saying anything, but the shadow of the other seemed to become clearer in each other's eyes. Go back and let's hold the wedding. Holding Xian Rongsu's face in her hands, Suzanne smiled broadly, but her eyes were extremely sincere. Without hesitation, Xian Rongsu nodded. She didn't think about what Xian Daoliu Bibidang and the others would do. She just wanted to agree. After rubbing Xian Rongsu's face, Suzanne hugged her into his arms. It seemed that only in this way could the two of them feel each other's presence more. In the past half month, Suzanne and the other two did not practice, but just played around in Poseidon Island. Sometimes I take Xian Rongsu to surf in the open sea, and sometimes I take her to catch crabs on the beach. The two of them are inseparable and extremely sweet. On the top of Poseidon Mountain, Bosake's face turned red and bright as she watched Xian Rongsu and Suzanne playing in the circular sea. She swore that if this continued, she really wanted to kill that bastard. Although they were happy, Suzanne and the two still remembered their own business on this day. The two of them came to the foot of Poseidon Mountain again. Looking at the 1,000 steps in front of them, Suzanne's eyes were bright. Put me down. Xian Rongsu pinched Suzanne's chin and reminded him with a smile. Okay Sue. Xian gave a long smile. His neck immediately bent and his head went straight towards Xian Rongsu's pretty face. He feeling Suzanne's arms relax. Xian Rongsu's silvery laughter rang out. Then she stepped lightly, like a butterfly dancing, and her body left Suzanne's feet and fell aside. Looking at Suzanne's sullen look, Xian Rongsu raised her eyebrows and stuck out her tongue with a sweet smile. I can't spare you until night. After saying something angrily, Kinbingsu blushed again. Suzanne raised the corners of his mouth slightly and turned his eyes to the steps ahead. Even though his strength has now reached several levels again, level 200 is still not something he can complete but at least he now sees some hope. The soul rings on the soles of the feet suddenly began to vibrate around the soles of the feet. Suzanne ran straight ahead, tapping lightly on the steps, and reached the 70th step in the blink of an eye. This is where he practiced before. Looking at the remaining 130 steps ahead, Suzanne's eyes became extremely firm. Today he wanted to see again where his limit was. Green and golden light bloomed from his body, and Suzanne stepped forward suddenly, reaching the 75th level. Just now, he jumped more than 20 steps, but now it is only 5 steps, which shows how great the pressure above is, knowing that he could only go up step by step. Suzanne began to advance slowly, and with the help of soul bone skills, he reached the 80th level point. Even after reaching the 80th step, Suzanne still didn't feel much pain. He stepped forward and slowly stood on the 81st step. Boom. It was like the pressure of a flash flood swept over him in an instant, which was not comparable to what he had seen before. Suzanne's body trembled slightly, but he still stood firm. When he went up to the 3rd level, and the pressure became more and more intense. The green light behind him became dim, as if it was about to be suppressed by the light of Poseidon. Boom. Suzanne's soul power surged, and on the 5th day, the 100,000-year soul ring suddenly lit up, and a layer of green and golden light emerged from his body. Suddenly, the pressure was relieved a lot, and Suzanne's speed also increased. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the 90th level, and reached the 91st level. This is one of the 100,000-year-old soul ring skills that Suzanne obtained, Holy Light Defense. In addition to its powerful defense, it can also rebound the opponent's attacks. It is also the only physical and energy defense skill Suzanne has obtained. It seems that he knows what Suzanne lacks most, and the soul ring skills match it perfectly. As for the second soul skill, it is called the symbiosis of all souls, which allows all soul beast type martial souls and soul masters of the same level to lose their attack power for 30 seconds. It is a control type skill that limits attack soul skills. Of course, it cannot offset the soul skills that have been released. It can only prevent the release of attack soul skills with the evolution of Wuhan. Suzanne's Wuhan's abilities tend to focus on auxiliary control skills such as defense and treatment. It is also affected by other bloodlines, so it has powerful attack capabilities. Assistance, control, agility, attack, power attack, are all developed in coordination. Suzanne's martial spirit is no longer a simple emerald swan, but a completely new variety derived from a mixture. Soul bone derived skills, double wing protection, 100,000-year soul ring skills, holy light defense. Using the two major skills at the same time, Suzanne's soul power was also consumed rapidly, and his face turned pale. Suzanne took out the milk bottle and started adding blue to herself. With the support of a 100,000-year soul skill, Suzanne slowly reached level 97 and finally stopped. The sweat on his face was like raindrops, falling on the steps, breaking into water droplets, and then evaporating. Chapter 236 Crush from my wife. With his current physical strength, level 97 is already the highest level, but definitely not all. Suddenly, the two guardian wings began to close and wrap themselves into a ball. Suzanne's golden behemoth claws were also released, and two blood red and light golden soul rings surrounded it, looking like a swimming dragon. Suddenly, the first red gold soul ring lit up, and armor-like scales suddenly began to extend from the claws of the golden behemoth. Unlike fish scales, which are neat and uniform, the scales look more like the armor on a mechanical behemoth, uneven and without any rules at all. The golden metal crystals rubbed straight up, spreading to the entire arm and right shoulder in the blink of an eye. The pieces of the armor were connected together, tight and solid, and there were bulges like rhinoceros horns at the elbows. With a slight fist, Suzanne could feel an explosive force. The blood throughout the body also became surging at this time, as if an eternal engine was supporting all operations. Then, the second soul ring also lit up, and the golden light enveloped Suzanne's body, directly covering up the green light of the holy light defense. In an instant, Suzanne felt that most of the pressure on his body had disappeared, and he felt much more relaxed. As expected of the Qian blood soul ring, it is indeed very powerful in increasing the body's effect. At this moment, Xian was already in his peak state. He doesn't have any domain skills, and his cultivation level is only that of a soul king, but this is enough. Stepping forward, Xian reached the 100th level and stepped directly over, breaking through the limit of the 100th level half. The pressure suddenly increased to another level. At level 107, even Xian was a little unable to bear it. Level 108 is the level that Damu Bei and the others in the original work need to reach for the 6th black level exam. Especially the last 3 levels, the pressure will rise sharply, which is a node 108, 136, 228, and 333 are the nodes between the 6th black level exam and the 9th Poseidon exam. The closer to this number, the greater the pressure. As for Xian and Qian Ringsu, both of whom were at level 200, it seems that their soul power levels were lower than the standard, and they were assessed alone without the assistance of others, so there was a difference point after all. The assessment is based on strength and potential, which are determined together. If Xian comes here as a soul master, which is generally level 333 like Tang San, it is basically no different from committing suicide. Boom. In the end, Xian stopped at level 107 and was then knocked out. In this way, compared to his results half a year ago, he was making rapid progress in another half year. I think it won't be a problem to pass level 200. Daughter-in-law, it's up to you. After returning to the shore from the floating corpse in the circular sea, Xian waved to the back and then lay down on the beach like a dead person. Oh my god, not only are my kidneys weak, but my body is almost weak now. Remember, if you reach level 200, take me there as well. Finally, Xian added, whether it was a joke or serious, it depends on what Qian Ringsu thinks. I've put your clothes on the shore for you. You can put them on yourself. Ying smiled. Qian Ringsu didn't pay much attention to Xian's last sentence. After calming down, she began to climb the steps. Half a month ago, Qian Ringsu's cultivation ladder was at level 83, and there was basically no big problem for her below level 100. In the blink of an eye, Qian Ringsu had reached level 99. Under the Angel Domain, the 2nd Soul Skill Divine Light, the 6th Soul Skill Angel Guard, and the attached Soul Bone, there was almost no difficulty. Qian Ringsu directly reached the 106th level. Feeling the increasing pressure, Qian Ringsu frowned, and her body trembled slightly, but she still stopped with her brows level 108. The difficulty of the 6th black level examination was directly broken by Qian Ringsu. Xian, who was changing clothes naked, suddenly froze when she saw this scene. MMP. Sure enough, some people are born with a good destiny. He worked so hard that he was only at level 107. Look at it, it was not difficult at all. There is no way, there is no domain, only one defense enhancing soul skill, one soul ring 10 levels lower than Qian Ringsu, and the martial soul is still a semi-auxiliary agility attack, etc. He is also helpless. If it weren't for the blessing of the Qian blood soul ring, he might not even be able to reach level 100. After all, the boss of the 7 monsters reached level 108. He was blessed by someone, and his cultivation level was still soul saint point. Although level 108 is still not his end point, it can be seen that if you want to reach level 108, you basically need soul saint cultivation. With Xian's soul king cultivation at the moment, being able to climb to level 107 is already pretty good. Finally, Qian Ringsu was ejected at level 139. In this way, she has also completed the content of the top level test and is not far away from level 200 point. If she were allowed to break through to Soul Saint and be able to use the martial soul avatar in the complete angelic realm, the 200th level would be just a piece of cake for her. After all, Qian Ringsu, who is in the true form of Wuhan, is not weaker than a titled Douluo. Plunging into the sea with a splash, all the clothes on Qian Ringsu's body were wet. It was originally a beautiful scene for a beauty to take a bath, but at this moment, her face was full of dissatisfaction. Why don't you catch me? Qian Ringsu said angrily. You have to wash it when you get back anyway. If you don't let me watch you wash it, then I can only appreciate your beauty now. Xian shrugged and returned righteously. Bah. Dirty. Xian Rinxu tensed up when she saw Suzanne staring blankly at her, her sharp eyes seeming to see through her whole body. After glaring at Suzanne angrily, Xian Rinxu fluttered her wings with a red face and leisurely returned to the villa. When Suzanne was about to go back, water suddenly began to rise in the circular sea, and a huge shark emerged. Xiao Bei, what are you doing here? The water splashed everywhere. Suzanne threw a stone into the sea and asked casually. The ring sea is connected to the sea, and it can be accessed through the sea. This is not the first time for Xiao Bei to come here. Every time, he will bring seafood over and eat with him. Aha. Transforming into a girl, Xiao Bei came to Suzanne's side with her naked feet. Can you lend me that big guy? Playing with his fingers, Xiao Bei looked a little nervous and looked to the side with guilty eyes, but his peripheral vision was looking towards Suzanne, full of expectation. Big guy? Hearing this, Suzanne was startled and then immediately realized that she should be talking about Godzilla. What? You've fallen in love with it and plan to give it a baby? With your physiques, they don't even match each other. Looking around at Xiao Bei, Suzanne seemed to be examining a prisoner. A picture couldn't help but appear in his mind, and suddenly goosebumps all over his body. Godzilla has a super species love with other monsters, and you, a little girl, hissin, sin boom. As soon as these words came out, Xiao Bei's brain also roared, and his face suddenly turned green and red, filled with shame and anger. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237, The Witch Harmed the Country. I will bear everything. Why did you come to borrow that guy? Looking at the water stains on his body, Suzanne felt that he should go back to the house and take a shower. He looked at Xiao Bei sideways and felt annoyed. Lend it to fight the evil killer whale king. It's rough-skinned, thick-skinned, and huge. It will definitely beat the shit out of the evil killer whale king. Clenching his waist, Xiao Bei was still angry, especially when he thought that his own kind had been attacked by evil killer whales recently, and the losses were considerable. He was even more angry. I'll probably have to kill the evil killer whale king in my next test. I'll wait until I pass the test. Suzanne waved his hand and refused directly. Assessment. Hearing this, Xiao Bei blinked his big eyes and couldn't help but look towards the top of Poseidon Mountain with admiration in his eyes. Sure enough, Poseidon still cares about their demon soul great white sharks. Then, remember to notify me when you pass the assessment. Nodding, Xiao Bei picked up Suzanne and headed directly towards the villa. Those who didn't know thought that Suzanne had been kidnapped by a girl. I can leave on my own, so you can't be gentler. After all, I'm from a girl's family. I'm gentle and virtuous. Do you understand? So, Xian was speechless. You are so greedy that you can do whatever you want. This is simply too much. That's what you humans say. I'm a soul beast, so I don't have to pay attention to that. Xiao Bei looked confident, but Suzanne had a dark look on his face. Sure enough, you can reason with girls. Sure enough, you can't reason with fooders, especially, don't talk about human things with things that are not human. After staying in Xue for nearly a year, Suzanne has become a regular meal ticket, and Xiao Bei comes basically every day. Both Sexy sometimes came, and sometimes didn't come, probably because she was concerned about saving face. After all, she was basically fine. Half a year later, Suzanne and Xian Rinxu completed the first stage of the assessment, and their soul powers reached levels 55 and 64. Not only that, the lifespan of Xian Rinxu's soul ring was directly increased by 1000 years. At this moment, her soul ring combination is purple, black, and red. As for the second stage of the assessment, breaking through the ring sea, it only took Suzanne and Xian Rinxu 3 days to pass. Despite Xiao Bei's fierce attitude, he is actually a fool, and his brain is obviously missing a string. As for his talkativeness, it would be better if he just used his mouth. Poseidon Island, back mountain cliff. 2 figures were tied to the cross, enduring the rough waves from the sea. Wow. It really hurts. It hurts me to death. Xian wailed loudly in pain, and the seawater kept leaving on his face. Maybe some people will believe that he is really in pain. In front of him, there was a huge light screen, projecting the scene of eating chicken. The same thing was in front of Xian Ringsu. Yes, the two are playing games using their minds. Even if their hands and feet are tied, so what? No one can stop them from playing games. Stop their enthusiasm for cultivation. Only by taking pleasure in suffering can we understand the sweetness of the end of suffering. The third test, tied body training. Knowing that Poseidon wanted to polish their bodies, Xian naturally did not cheat, but just injected some immune pain medicine in advance. Although it didn't hurt, the polish on his body was definitely in place, and he would not accept the severe pain. Stupidly. Bright purple bloomed in Xian's eyes, and Xian's eyes seemed to change shape, looking evil and terrifying. Xian could clearly feel every fluctuation of the sea, and could even feel the force of every blow from the sea and the gurgling sound of the running water. Looking at Xian Ringsu, who was not far away, Xian felt his nose felt hot and blood flowed directly from his nose. MMP. The spiritual power of the externally attached soul bone is too strong, which is not a good thing. Sin. However, my wife's figure is really good. No wonder I can't put it down so much. What's wrong with you? Paying attention to the blood red water flowing down, Xian Ringsu turned around and saw Xian's nose bleeding and couldn't help but ask, "It's nothing. The weather is too hot and I'm a bit angry." Xian waved his hands quickly and controlled the strangeness in his eyes. If the blood continued to flow like this, he would definitely suffer from blood loss and kidney deficiency. In tide training, Xian needs to practice here for a year, 12 hours a day. Even Xian Ringsu is the same. Xian and his wife would come here every day, and both Saxi would pick up the body every time. Although they couldn't feel severe pain, they still felt pain. Especially the sea water lapping and washing their bodies caused great torture to their souls and bodies at first. Within just a few hours, Xian was so exhausted that he fainted, but it was only later that he could hold on for a longer time. As for now, he had already started playing games, and he didn't even bother to inject the potion to reduce the pain. In the blink of an eye, 1 year passed quickly, and Xian was almost 17 years old now. His soul power at this moment has reached level 60. As for Xian Ringsu, it is as high as level 69. He is only one level short of becoming a soul saint and obtaining the true body of the martial soul. In the past 2 years, Xian felt that she was happy in terms of life experience. But in terms of system experience, Xian felt that he had wasted his time. Woohoo, he even forgot to refresh the system a few times. This is all Xian Ringsu's fault. Even though she is beautiful, she still pesters her at night. Xian is really exhausted trying to teach her a lesson. Finally, I successfully forgot about the system. Therefore, it is not wrong at all to say that the witch harmed the country. I advise everyone not to find beautiful friends in the future. He has already been thrown out of the country by the witches, so as long as this is not the case, just let them harm me. It is absolutely obligatory to sacrifice oneself for others. Xian and Xian Ringsu have passed the 3rd stage of the assessment. As for the 4th stage, they still need to kill the evil killer whale. Seeing Xiaobei's high spirits, and not afraid at all, Xian couldn't help but want to laugh. The majesty of Godzilla seems to give Xiaobei a lot of confidence. Glancing at Xian Ringsu, Xian reminded, "Let's go after you reach level 70. Hearing this, Xiaobei was stunned, and even Xian Ringsu was stunned. "You are already level 60, right? I can get you 100,000 year 6th soul ring, right?" Xian Ringsu looked at Xian in confusion. It was okay if he didn't mention this, but when he mentioned this, Xian's face suddenly fell. My swan martial soul is noble by nature and cannot absorb evil soul beasts, so Xian did not continue the rest. Even though he was now the Emerald Swan martial spirit, he still rejected evil and murderous spirit beasts. The setting is simply fucked to the extreme. Of course, Behemoth is actually a dark and evil soul beast, but after all, the bloodline is not directly attached to the martial soul, so Xian can inhale it into his body. coupled with the neutralization and purification of the Emerald Swan bloodline and the Behemoth bloodline that Suzanne inhaled in stages, it was successful. This was also one of the reasons why Suzanne chose the Emerald Swan bloodline in the first place. Chapter 238. Women are all about their looks, so you can't absorb evil soul beasts either. Hearing this, Xian Ringsu was also extremely shocked and blurted out subconsciously, and then Suzanne suddenly felt that her whole body was not well. Suzanne, what a wonderful use of the word ye of yours. Your swan martial spirit is holy. How come my angel martial spirit is not holy? Seeing Suzanne's loveless look, Xian Ringsu rolled her eyes and said angrily, so, this 100,000-year soul ring of the evil killer whale was just wasted. Xian suddenly felt very heartbroken. As long as he had 2 martial souls, he wouldn't be so prodigal. The content of the assessment is to destroy the evil killer whale, and the evil killer whale king must be killed by the assessor. In other words, either he absorbs it, or Xian Ringsu absorbs it, but, very meow, neither of them could absorb this evil and murderous soul beast. Gilu now, are they all living a life of wasting 100,000-year soul rings? Forget it, it's a waste. Let's talk about it later, when we have the chance. Suzanne shook his head and replied with an indifferent look. Anyway, he still has 3 ordinary 100,000-year-old soul beasts here. He will wait until he needs them. If they are really missing, then he will give the rogue rabbit a ride. Just do what you say. Riding the demonic great white shark Xiao Bei, Suzanne took Xian Ringsu to the waters of the demonic Orca King. He is very familiar with the evil killer whale king, and there are many soul beasts in the sea, so it is not difficult to find them. Approaching the sea area station, Suzanne asked Xiao Bei to stay on the outskirts, while he took Xian Ringsu to fly high into the sky. If you look closely, you can see large long black spots below. If you look carefully, you will find that they are huge whales. Even if it is just a random one, its size is already over 20 meters, almost the same as Xiao Bei. But compared to Xiao Bei's streamlined appearance, the evil killer whale king looks more domineering and strong. Especially the huge head and the jagged teeth can be seen when he opens his mouth. In the center, there is an evil killer whale that is more than 30 meters long. Its skin is as dark as steel, and its dark red eyes are full of ferocious aura. 100,000-year-old soul beast, the evil killer whale king. Alas, it's such a shame to have a 100,000-year soul ring. Looking at the evil killer whale king, Suzanne suddenly didn't want to kill it. The value utilization rate was too low. However, after coming here, it's not good to just go back without saying anything. Suzanne directly released Godzilla. Godzilla, just leave the biggest one and take care of the rest. The evil killer whales had just finished hunting, and many of them seemed to be still sleeping. Boom. A huge figure fell from the sky, and the powerful impact knocked many evil killer whales unconscious. Some who were unlucky were killed by Godzilla. As the waves rolled back, blood-red blood filled the sea surface. Smelling the smell of blood, the dark red eyes of the evil killer whale turned blood red. The evil killer whales within a radius of 10,000 meters came towards the center crazily in an instant. Rolling roars erupted from the evil killer whale king, and the other evil killer whales responded, and the energy in their bodies swept out like waves. The surrounding sea seemed to have become thicker, without the feeling of rolling waves. All the evil killer whales seemed to have sensed something, and their eyes suddenly looked towards the bottom of the sea. I saw a huge black object rising rapidly on the deep blue seabed. Boom. The 100-meter long tail set off huge waves. Several evil killer whales were directly hit by the tail and exploded. The blood in the sky seemed to dye the sea area red. A one-sided fight has begun. Facing the huge and invincible Godzilla, the evil killer whale, which is only more than 20 meters tall, is nothing more than a toy for him to play around with. Seeing the bloody battle in the distant sea, Xiao Bei was completely dumbfounded, especially the smell of blood, which made her even more frightened. This big guy's really too strong. Raw, not to mention Xiao Bei, he was the evil killer whale king. When he saw Godzilla's complete body clearly, his cold and blood-red eyes froze in an instant. In his impression, such a huge soul beast could only be possessed by the overlord of the ocean, the deep-sea demonic whale king. This guy, where did this soul beast come from, to be so powerful? Raw, seeing the evil killer whales under his command dying one by one, the evil killer whale king suddenly became angry. Then He began to escape with his men. Anger is one thing, but seeing the ferocious appearance of Godzilla, surrounded by the deep sea demon whale king who is a 100,000-year-old soul beast, there is only fear in his heart at this moment. If the fight continues, I'm afraid that the evil killer whale family will perish, and even it will not be able to survive. Seeing that the evil killer whale was actually running away, Godzilla easily let it go and chased after him with his tail swung. However, after all, it is a marine creature, and Godzilla's speed cannot catch up with the evil killer whale king. You should also go down and practice your skills. Seeing the evil killer whale escaping, Xian waved to Xian Rinxu and said, Xian Rinxu is now level 69, and the ordinary evil killer whale cannot defeat her. Anyway, she is watching, so nothing will happen to her. The golden figure disappeared in a flash, and Xian Rinxu had already chased after him point in the sky. Her speed is definitely among the best. Even the evil killer whale king cannot swim as fast as her. Seeing Xian Rinxu leaving, Xian slowly took out a scepter-shaped object from the system space. It is no more than 10 centimeters long, and its head is in the shape of an inverted 8. The outside of the crystal is inlaid with golden stripes, and there are also golden stripes on both ends of the long handle point. Familiar friends will naturally know it, so there is no need to say more. Oh, what? Did you agree not to cheat? Without cheating, who can defeat this 100,000-year-old soul beast, the evil killer whale king? Unless Xian Rinxu's cultivation level breaks through to the soul saint, he is only capable of fighting. Whether he can defeat him or not is another question. The right hand is raised high at the elbow, sideways to the right. The left hand is placed behind the right hand, and then the right hand is rotated and turned straight up. In an instant, a strong white light burst out, and a red and blue figure cut through the sky, catching up with Xian Rinxu in the blink of an eye. Seeing the weirdo in front of her, Xian Rinxu knew who it was without even thinking, and couldn't help but complain. Why don't you just wear that mecha? This suit is too ugly. The figure in front of him seemed to be wearing an unknown coat. No wonder Xian Rinxu complained. I saw that his arms were blue, his waist and neck were red, and there was a diamond crystal in the middle of the golden armor on his chest, without any gaps at all. What makes Xian Rinxu even more unreasonable is that the two big white eyes on the pointed head always look very awkward. Hearing Xian Rinxu's words, Xian almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure suddenly fell from the sky and fell into the sea with a thud. Chapter 239 Challenge, titled Douluo. Seeing Xian falling from the sky like a treasure, Xian Rinxu suddenly laughed, ignored him, and chased after the evil killer whale. The black soul ring flickered, a golden sword appeared in her hand, and she began her hunting journey. Under the sea, Xian was even more heartbroken when he saw Xian Rinxu's appearance at this moment through the seawater. My heart is broken. Don't you know how to come down and comfort me? Next time you shout words like stop and quick at night, it will be over if I ignore you. If the baby is angry, the consequences will be serious. Xian clenched his fists and began a wonderful hunting trip of one roaring monster after another with one punch. Although his body of more than 50 meters is not comparable to Godzilla, his speed and strength are not weak at all. Waves of blue light erupted from Xian's hand, and all the evil killer whales that came into contact with the light were cut in half. Godzilla was left behind, and only Xian and the other two were left to hunt, and Xian was still hunting most of them. At this moment, there are still more than 100 evil killer whales left on the run. Seeing the red light of the timer on his chest flashing, Xian had no choice but to fly into the sky from the sea and switch to skyform. Call out. Ice blue light burst out from the palm and fell on the path that the evil killer whale king must pass. Visible to the naked eye, thick ice suddenly formed on the sea, extending towards the nearly 1 kilometer swimming line of the evil killer whale. However, the ice line only extended for more than 400 meters before stopping, and Xian returned to a human body. There's nothing I can do. I used too many tricks and I don't have enough energy. Zao. Bei, I'll leave the rest to you. Xian said. There are only more than 50 evil killer whale kings left to escape, and the boss of the evil killer whale king has been captured, so the remaining ones are nothing to be afraid of. After all, Zio Bei is also a 100,000-year soul beast, and there are also 200 demon soul great white sharks in the clan, which is more than enough to deal with some stragglers. What move was that just now? It was so powerful. Surprised voices rang in her ears. Suzanne looked at Xian Ringsu, who looked surprised and sat down cross-legged angrily. Don't ask me, I'm too ugly and not worth asking. Waving his hand, Suzanne had a stern face, as if the baby was very angry and didn't want to pay attention to you. PFFT. Seeing that Suzanne was sulking because of this, Xian Ringsu smiled slightly and immediately came to Suzanne's side. Isn't it just a sentence? Isn't that what it is? The flawless green jade hand hugged Suzanne's arm. Xian Ringsu pushed it slightly. The bulge pressed against Suzanne's arm and deformed, with a begging smile on her face. Point seduction. Do you think I'm the one who's doing this? I rely on this face for my livelihood now. You just ruined my job. Suzanne stated the seriousness of the incident seriously, and Xian Ringsu's smile became even brighter. Is this okay? Holding Suzanne's cheek, Xian Ringsu slowly pressed it on her, and the warm feeling instantly reached Suzanne's nerve endings. Xian Ringsu's face was also a little red, but she no longer had the shyness of the little girl back then, and instead had a bit more mature beauty. Forget it if the soft rice tastes good this time. Let's talk about it next time. See if I can't take care of you. Waving his hand over Tinkyou, Suzanne gave a serious warning with a serious face. Xian Ringsu glared at Suzanne with a mixture of shame and anger. Her cheeks were already turning crimson, especially when she felt Suzanne's dishonest hot hand. Her body became a little hot. Stop making trouble and finish the assessment quickly. Bullying me every night is not enough. Pouting her little lips, Xian Ringsu quickly pushed Suzanne, fearing that he would act recklessly on the sea. Otherwise she would be embarrassed to see others. Okay, I'll listen to you during the day. After shaking Xian Ringsu's head, Suzanne replied meaningfully. Then he hugged Xian Ringsu, whose face was hot, and fell from the sky, standing on the ice on the sea with his feet. Although Dago's freezing beam froze them, the evil killer whale still did not die. Taking out hundreds of robots from the system space, Suzanne asked them to drill holes in the ice, and then installed soul bombs on them, intending to destroy these evil killer whales together. Boom. Continuous explosions exploded on the sea, and ice flowers appeared in a line in the sea for hundreds of meters. The ice was blown hundreds of meters high, and the scene looked like a fireworks explosion. All the ice blocks shattered, and the evil killer whales wrapped inside also shattered into pieces. The vast sea area turned scarlet, looking particularly tragic. When a whale falls, everything comes to life. What the evil killer whale plundered from the ocean is now returned to the ocean again. Victory. By cleverness, single-handedly killed more than 100 evil killer whales, killed the evil killer whale king with my own hands, and lost 0 to the great white shark of evil souls. The fourth test was over completed. Poseidon's affinity increased by 15%, excess, and the total affinity increased by 40%. Hearing this old voice, Suzanne ignored it. His expression was neither sad nor happy, and his eyes turned to Xian Ringsu. The number 1 killed was too small, but none of the demonic great white sharks died, so the reward remains the same. Xian Ringsu stuck out her tongue playfully, but she still looked very happy, even though she didn't increase the reward point at the first level of soul power, will be released later. All soul rings will increase by 1000 years. In other words, she only needs to complete one more test before her 4th soul ring can become a 10,000 year soul ring, but immediately. Xian Ringsu's smile froze. You received it too, right? The corner of Suzanne's mouth twitched violently. Sure enough, that old man Poseidon was really bad. The 5th of the 9 Poseidon tests, challenge the guardian of the sacred pillar. The timing starts from the time when the first guardian of the sacred pillar is challenged. All challenges must be completed within 3 days. The 2 of them must defeat the 7 guardians of the sacred pillar to pass. Special reminder, the 2 of them can only use Soul Master fighting methods, otherwise it will be considered a failure. Suzanne, MMP, a special reminder, this is definitely a naked attack. The content of the assessment was exactly the same as that of Tangson and others, but the difference was that the assessment became 2 people. 2 against 1, challenged 7 people. Although it seemed that 2 versus 1 was a big advantage, even if Xian Ringsu broke through to the Soul Saint and could use the martial spirit avatar, she didn't dare to say that she could defeat the titled Douluo. Even if you add a soul emperor like yourself, it will be very difficult to defeat him, and among them is Hailong, a super Douluo. 3 days, 1 wears 7. The task is very arduous. It seems like we need to carefully select some soul tools that we can find handy. After thinking for a moment, Suzanne's eyes suddenly brightened, and he had found a way out. Super god level mechas are used by ordinary people and are not the fighting methods of soul masters, but ordinary soul guides can be used by soul masters. Bombs, shells and other soul tools can easily injure oneself and cannot be used within the narrow range of the holy pillar. However, one can prepare more soul weapons and defensive soul tools. Depend on. It's finally time to start fighting for your fortune. Chapter 240 Challenge the Holy Pillar entitled Douluo. After digging out the soul bone of the evil killer Whale King, it is still 100,000-year-old soul bone, so it must be cherished. Roar. Hearing the roar in his ears, Suzanne frowned and looked at Godzilla, whose head surfaced above the water. I can let you come out to play, but don't mess around in the sea, or I will lock you up forever. Suzanne reminded coldly. When Godzilla is in the sea, he is just like a million-year-old soul beast. He has no opponent at all. Suzanne doesn't want the sea to be messed up by this guy. Raw. Hearing this, Godzilla nodded excitedly and dived into the deep sea. There is a volcano there. When it reaches its peak, I must fight with that turtle to see who is the overlord. After hearing Godzilla's last words, Suzanne also smiled. He didn't expect this guy to be so vindictive. As for the deep sea demonic Whale King, Godzilla will have nothing to say if he wins. Even if he is beaten to death, there is no problem. The worst he can do is travel through time and pick up a body or something. Wow. Taking Xian Rinksu back to the beach villa, Suzanne took out all his 100,000-year soul bones. The total amount is not much, only about 7 or 8 yuan. As for the soul bone attached to the evil eye, it has been absorbed by him. With his current strength, what he fears most is the threat from the spirit. It's a pity that you have a soul bone suit. Otherwise, if these soul bones are installed when you break through to the soul saint, I'm afraid even a super Douluo may not be able to defeat you. Looking at the soul bones on the ground, Suzanne glanced at Xian Rinksu and couldn't help but sigh. The 6 soul bones in the angel suit were already matched and were inherited soul bones. Otherwise, with his soul bones, he could get a new set of soul bones for Xian Rinksu. I don't know what the angel god is thinking. None of them are 100,000-year-old soul bones. Together, not even a million-year-old soul bone. Just this. Do you dare to use it as an inherited soul bone? Nonsense. No wonder the angel god can't defeat the Poseidon. It's your ancestors who are the cause of the trouble. Although she knew that Suzanne was telling a fact, Xian Rinksu always felt that he was trying to squeeze him out, so she rolled her eyes at him angrily, with a sour taste of envy on her face. Go ahead and choose a soul guide that suits you. All the soul guides here are level 8, but it's best to wait until you break through to Soul Saint before using them, otherwise it will put too much pressure on your body. Suzanne smiled knowingly and then threw a storage ring to her, which contained 8 level soul tools. Although the 8th level soul guide can hardly cause much damage to the titled Douluo, the titled Douluo also needs to take great pains to resist the soul Douluo level attack power. In addition, after Xian Rinksu breaks through to the Soul Saint, her strength will be comparable to that of a titled Douluo. With the help of the soul guide, the power of her soul skills will be much greater. As for the 9th level attack type soul tool, forcing Xian Rinksu to use it would cause too much damage. Although Suzanne had absolute healing ability, he was reluctant to let her get hurt. That's pretty much it. Seeing Suzanne like this, a smile suddenly appeared on Xian Rinksu's face. Ignoring her, Suzanne looked at the soul bones on the ground and began to think about how to match them. He now only has 1 right arm bone, which means he still has to absorb 5 soul bones. Yes, it's true that I don't have enough strength. I only rely on equipment to make it happen. Although the position of the left arm bone is not quite right, it would be nice to install one from a titan to give it a little more strength. The left and right leg bones, 1 for pure attack, 1 for pure control. Ground speed can also be mentioned. The trunk bone, M, should be reserved for the million-year-old deep sea demon Whale King, otherwise it will easily lose its sense of existence. Deep sea demonic Whale King, thank you so much. As for the skull, it must be the Emperor's auspicious beast, the three-eyed golden elephant destiny skull, which by the way, gives him added lucky attributes. After thinking about everything, Suzanne went back to the room. To retreat. Absorbing 4 soul bones in a row would do too much psychological damage to him. He could just hide and cry alone without being disturbed by others. Challenging the guardian of the holy pillar takes 1 month and succeeds within 3 days, but there are only 2 opportunities, so Suzanne and Xian Ringsu are not in a hurry. Half a month later, Suzanne and Xian Ringsu came out of seclusion together. The fire attribute is suitable for Xian Ringsu's 7th soul ring. In order for it to absorb the 3-headed red demon mastiff, that is 100,000 years old, Suzanne put a lot of effort into it. Moreover, he had to absorb soul bones for her to increase the speed and attack power of his left foot, which is annoying or not. At the same time, Suzanne also obtained his 6th soul ring, and his strength was upgraded to Soul Emperor. This time, Suzanne brought Xian Ringsu back to the Seahorse Holy Pillar. As the old saying goes, it's easy to make good moves with people you know. You are here for the 5th test, right? Seeing Suzanne bringing Xian Ringsu over, Seahorse Douluo was not surprised at all, and even looked at Suzanne with respect. Especially when his eyes glanced at the golden trident mark on Suzanne's forehead. He subconsciously straightened up a little. Senior Aya, we are all old friends. How about we decide the outcome with 1 move? Suzanne smiled and started discussing. 1 move determines victory or defeat. Seeing Suzanne's half-joking look, Seahorse Douluo couldn't help but laugh. The battle between soul masters cannot be determined by 1 move. It cannot be a competition between soul power and soul rings. There was a slight pause in his tone, and the smile on Seahorse Douluo's face grew stronger, as if he had seen through Suzanne's little thoughts. Besides, 1 move determines the outcome. Even if you defeat me, the consumption will not be too great. This is undoubtedly my betrayal. This is very disrespectful to Lord Poseidon. How can Senior Eurasia be so presumptuous? Do you really think that the 2 of us can win? Surely, although he was happy with these words in his heart, Suzanne had to condemn him, and felt sad for Seahorse Douluo. He hates things that can be solved with real swords and guns. Why do he have to use his hands and feet when things can be solved by using his brain? Hearing this, Seahorse Douluo stopped talking, and a flash of blue bloomed from his body. The Seahorse Holy Pillar also burst out with light, rising into the sky, converging with 7 other rays of light, and finally being rendered golden by the golden light of the Sea God Temple. These 8 pillars are your assessment time, so let's stop talking nonsense and get started. Let me see what you have achieved on Poseidon Island in the past 2 years. Seahorse Douluo said with high spirits. Seeing Seahorse Douluo like this, Suzanne shook his head. It seemed like he really had to teach him a lesson. 1 minute later, Suzanne kicked the frozen Seahorse Douluo into the sea, and then left the Seahorse Holy Pillar with Xian Ringsu. Seahorse Douluo, MMP, I haven't even used my martial soul's true form. You guys are such bastards. Within a minute, Suzanne fully experienced the horror of Seahorse Douluo's control. There was no way. There were too many control skills, and they all started 100,000 years ago, so he was helpless. Chapter 241 The Plan Against the Titled Douluo. Boom. Under the golden spear, a blonde middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes and looked at the disappearing light pillar with a look of surprise in his eyes. It only took less than a minute, and you lost. Full of astonishment. Although Seahorse Douluo ranks in the middle in terms of strength, he is still a titled Douluo. Even if he wants to defeat Seahorse Douluo, it will take a long time. Now, just lose like this? Be careful. Control soul skills. Seeing the holy pillar suddenly light up, and the words flashing on it, Sealance Douluo's pupils shrank suddenly with a look of shock on his face. Did that guy lose to the control soul skill? Don't the 2 of them have control type soul masters? Some people couldn't understand what was going on, but Spear Douluo couldn't think too much, because Suzanne and the others were already here. As expected of the 2 people who took the 9th Poseidon examination and the top 8th examination, you are really surprised. Standing up slowly, Sealance Douluo looked at Suzanne and Xian Ringsu, and a fierce fighting spirit suddenly burst out. The golden light on his body complemented the sea spear holy pillar, and a flash of shining gold rushed into the sky, seeming to announce the arrival of the examiner. Looking at Silence Douluo, Suzanne's face also looked a little solid. The opponent was a powerful attack weapon soul master. Among these 7 people, he was ranked among the top 3 ruthless characters in terms of strength. Moreover, the light of Poseidon has the smallest influence on him. If it hasn't recovered yet, you might as well take the assessment again later. Noticing that Suzanne and the other 2 were holding milk bottles, which seemed to be helpful in recovering their soul power, Sea Spear Douluo reminded them. There was nothing he could do. Sea Spear Douluo was defeated too quickly. He had 3 days left, and he didn't want to take advantage of others. Senior, since the 2 of us are here, the assessment has already begun. Please take action first. After putting away the milk bottle, Suzanne took Xue and flew up to the sea spear sacred pillar without continuing to consume it. This is a tough nut to crack. He can be taken down, even if he takes a break today. It will definitely not delay the subsequent assessment. Good. With a fierce shout, Sea Spear Douluo's 9 soul rings were immediately released, and a golden spear appeared in his hand. Boom. Titled Douluo's fierce pressure hit them. If it had been before, the 2 of them would have been crushed to the ground. But after practicing with the Poseidon's light and tide, their physical fitness was no longer what it used to be. They only frowned slightly, but they had no fear. Daughter-in-law, you go first. After pushing Xue, the latter did not hesitate, and slowly took out a golden longsword from the storage ring. Under the scorching sun, Xue hadn't even begun to inject soul power, but the longsword was already burning with blazing fire. This is the 8th level soul guide of the Sun and Moon Empire. It can absorb and store solar energy. It has been stored for 15 days. The golden wings stretched out from behind, and Xue figure slowly floated into the sky. Her noble and cold face looked even more like a fairy and a dream against the backdrop of the golden light. Seraphic angel martial spirit. Seeing the golden figure shining on Xue's body, Silence Douluo's eyes also darkened, but he was soon dumbfounded. I saw 7 soul rings emerging from the soles of Xue's feet. 4 purple, 1 black, and 2 red. Damn it, 7 soul rings, 2 of which are 100,000-year soul rings. Soon, an even more dazzling bright red color came into view again. Sea Spear Douluo glanced at Suzanne, and his brain suddenly stopped thinking. Yellow, yellow, purple, red, red, 2 yellow, 1 purple and 3 red, half of 100,000-year soul ring. Nimmer, you are playing checkers. From a 1,000-year soul ring, it was a direct transition to a 100,000-year soul ring, and there were 300,000-year soul rings suddenly. Silence Douluo felt that he was not keeping up with the progress of the times, and he doubted whether he was really old. Are people in the outside world now so arrogant? Exclamation mark. Seeing Silence Douluo stunned, Xue raised her eyes, and her 4th soul ring suddenly lit up. A golden longsword and the sun god sword overlapped, and the orange-yellow flame suddenly turned into gold. This is the realm. The bright, pure and holy energy struck, and Silence Douluo felt that the soul power in his body was dissipating, and he suddenly woke up. Golden light shone throughout the entire holy pillar, leaving only gold between heaven and earth, and the surrounding scenery suddenly disappeared. Even with his title Douluo strength, he could only rely on his mental power. His perception was only 5 meters in front of him, and he couldn't even see the shadows of the 2 of them. Suddenly, Silence Douluo's heart tightened, and his body seemed to turn into golden liquid, and merge into the golden spearman and spear merge into one. Although Sea Spear Douluo blended in, many complex and mysterious magic patterns suddenly appeared on the originally smooth spear, which looked very similar to the patterns on the holy pillar. With the combination of man and weapon, Sea Spear Douluo's strength has reached its peak. Even Xue's sacred sword strike just now was resisted by him head-on. However, what he faced was still Xue's angel realm, and it was also the angel realm used by Wuhan's true form. This, feeling that he couldn't move, Sea Spear Douluo was stunned. At this moment, he suddenly understood why Seahorse Douluo lost. Damn it. This is so bullying. Senior, your domain is an internal domain, and cannot be released externally. There is no way to compete with this angelic domain. Seeing that the spear was bound in place and unable to move, Suzanne kindly reminded him. But as soon as he finished speaking, a fierce golden light burst out from the spear, directly destroying Suzanne's other walkie-talkie. Seeing that silenced Douluo fell into the trap, Suzanne immediately laughed and moved quickly. The green thunder claws, attached to the golden behemoth claws, like meteors, flew straight towards the spear. As expected of a titled Douluo, even if his perception was only a few meters away, Spear Douluo had already reacted the moment he entered his perception range. Boom. The cyan light and the golden light emitted by the spear collided, and the former was quickly extinguished. This is Silenced Douluo's 8th soul skill, which can temporarily block the enemy's attack. Even Suzanne's 100,000-year-old soul bone control skill Azure Slow Claw has no effect point. But, can it really be blocked? Stab. The sound of metal cutting sounded. The sparks were drowned by the golden light in the sky, and Beeman's sharp claws slid down the edge of the spear. There were 3 more gaps half a centimeter deep on the spear, and the golden light emanating from the spear suddenly dimmed a lot. That's right, Spear Douluo's 8th soul skill can indeed withstand energy attacks, but it cannot withstand the cutting of Behemoth's claws, and this is Suzanne's real purpose point. Before coming to challenge, he had thoroughly studied Silenced Douluo's soul skills. Under the constraints of the angel realm, Suzanne knew that he would be so resistant. This shows how important it is to review before the exam. Silenced Douluo thought that his 8th soul skill was so powerful that it could not harm him. Coupled with the weapon soul's true body state, it was simply an energy and physical defense. But he never would have thought that Suzanne had behemoth claws with attached soul bones, which were extremely powerful and unstoppable. No metal could withstand it, and the same was true for spears. Chapter 242 Xian Rinxu, Rogue. Knowing that it would be very difficult for Xian Rinxu's angel domain to trap a titled Douluo, after all, she was now a soul saint, so Suzanne planned to make a quick decision. Point. Boom. His left foot suddenly lit up with a snow-white light, and ice-like crystals filled it. Suzanne turned over and leaped up, slashing out with one kick. The snow-white light was hidden in the golden light. Silenced Douluo's perception was limited, and he could not feel the attack at all. Before. The time he had to react was only a few meters away, and he had just been injured by Suzanne's behemoth claw. The snow-white light fell like a battle axe, exploding around the golden spear, and layers of icicles popped out, directly freezing the golden spear inside. Suzanne's 6th soul ring absorbed the octagonal black ice grass. Because his body was already impervious to water and fire, he was able to absorb the ultimate ice attribute Soul Beast and Soul Bone. And this brought Suzanne 2 control skills, a range attack and a control free skill. Just now, it was the 100,000-year-old Soul Bone skill, Freezing Slash. Wow. Seeing Silenced Douluo being frozen, all the golden color around him converged in an instant, and everything returned to its original appearance. The angel's true form, integrated into the energy of the angel domain, was even more dazzling. I saw the 6th soul ring on the sole of Xian Rinxu's feet suddenly light up. It was no longer red, but a golden soul ring rendered by the martial soul's true body. The thumbs and index fingers of both hands are connected respectively, making a beautiful heart gesture. The angel's true form, which is one with Xian Rinxu, also does the same. Aha. A huge long sword formed in front of the bright angel, as if judging the sins of the world, pointing directly at Spear Douluo below. Before the golden giant sword was released, the surrounding air had already begun to boil. The terrifying energy fluctuations distorted the space. The 6th soul skill, 100,000-year soul skill, the Sword of Judgment. It is also Xian Rinxu's strongest single soul skill. With the martial soul's true body integrated into the angelic realm, its attack power is definitely not inferior to that of ordinary titled Douluo. Seeing Xian Rinxu starting to release her ultimate move, Suzanne stepped back and distanced himself. His eyes were blood red, with a touch of cold white in the center of the blood red pupils. At the same time, the 6th soul ring on the sole of the foot was also rotating rapidly, as if it was about to release a soul skill. When absorbing the 6th soul ring, a large amount of the energy of the octagonal black ice grass was absorbed by the evil eye. While promoting the evolution of the latter, his 6th soul skill, Frozen Eye, also needed to be released by the evil eye. Even if Sealant's Douluo breaks through the ice at this moment, he still has the ability to freeze him again. He absolutely cannot avoid Xian Rinxu's Sword of Judgment. Although Suzanne is an agility and attack type soul master, he is no different from a control type soul master at this moment. The 4th soul ring, 100,000-year soul skill, the roar of the double-winged azure dragon. The 5th soul ring, 100,000-year soul skill, the symbiosis of all spirits. The 6th soul skill, 100,000-year soul skill, frozen eyes. The right arm has an azure bull python soul bone and azure dull claws. Left arm titan ape soul bone, gravity field point. The left leg's octagonal black ice grass soul bone is frozen and slashed. Evil eye gaze. Every skill can trap titled Douluo for some time. This is the reason why Seahorse Douluo failed in the end. Knowing that the Emerald Swan martial spirit has weak attack power, Suzanne prepared attack and control soul bone skills for himself to make up for the shortcomings of the martial spirit. Boom. The golden giant sword struck down, and powerful energy poured down from the tip of the sword. In the blink of an eye, all of Suzanne's ice was shattered, and it directly hit the golden spear. Click. There was a faint sound of cracking, and cracks began to appear on the part of the golden spear that was damaged by Suzanne, and the cracks were spreading. There is no chance of defense. It is too reluctant to just rely on the man and spear to forcibly receive the title Douluo level attack. Just as the winner was being decided, the holy pillar suddenly lit up with golden light. Sealant's Douluo's figure appeared, and the Sword of Judgment also dissipated. Obviously, the outcome is decided. I lost. Seeing Lord Sealant's stated attitude, Sealant's Douluo dragged his scarred body and replied, then immediately crossed his legs and adjusted his breathing. The clothes on his body were torn to pieces, and blood was oozing from the wound on his abdomen. Spear Douluo looked particularly embarrassed at this moment. The man and the spear merged into one, and the spear was also his. In addition, the martial spirit and the body were one, and what Spear Douluo suffered was a double attack damage point. If the spear breaks, Spear Douluo will also die, which is why Poseidon suddenly intervened. Senior, admit it. Seeing the golden light disappear in the sky, Suzanne bowed his hands to Spear Douluo, and then left with Xian Rinxu. The next scene, you'll be watching from high above. You don't need to get involved. Do you understand? Noticing the paleness on Xian Rinxu's face, Suzanne touched her head distressedly, with deep care in her warm tone. I'm fine. Just take a little rest. Shaking her head, Xian Rinxu forced a smile, but her pale face made her look even more haggard. Using the angel domain to trap two titled Douluo in succession was not just a simple consumption of soul power, but also a huge consumption of mental power, and the latter required time to recover. Suddenly, Xian Rinxu jumped away from Suzanne like a frightened rabbit, tightly holding onto her golden waist. Her dimples were hot and red, and her long eyelashes were trembling slightly. Xian Rinxu stared at Suzanne with shame and anger. If the other party hadn't been her husband, she would have skinned and crammed the gangster. This is outside. This guy wants to do that to me. It's so embarrassing. You afraid now? If you act arrogant and don't take care of yourself in the future, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. Approaching slightly, looking at Xian Rinxu's alert and frightened look, Suzanne pinched her red cheeks and reminded her seriously. I told you to rest next time. Did you hear that? Seeing Xian Rinxu's stunned look, Suzanne patted its little butt and shouted angrily, "You Xian!" Rinxu was immediately ashamed, but when she saw Suzanne's serious face, her fiery eyes full of seriousness, and she didn't seem to be joking at all, Xian Rinxu's heart suddenly trembled. Yeah, I know, afraid that Suzanne was really here. Xian Rinxu felt ashamed and angry, and in the end she had no choice but to compromise and mumbled back, with her small mouth pursed, her lower lip raised, and her upper lip tightly closed. Xian Rinxu looked like a girl who had been bullied, ashamed, and angry, but there was an imperceptible sweetness in her eyes. After giving Xian Rinxu a slight kiss, Suzanne knelt down slightly and left her back to Xian Rinxu. Let's go. I'll take you there. After this last fight, we'll go back and rest. A sweet smile suddenly appeared on Xian Rinxu's face. Chapter 243 The Strongest Attack, The Light of Time and Space. Seeing two companions lose in succession, Sea Fantasy Douluo was also shocked. This speed is too fast. Is it possible that the two of them are so strong? Shaking his head, he noticed that the two of them were heading this way, and Heihu and Douluo quickly released his martial spirit. A layer of blue mist instantly filled the entire holy pillar platform, hiding everything, and the figure of Sea Fantasy Douluo also disappeared into the mist. After a while, Suzanne came here carrying Xian Ringsu. He had no choice but to do it. His wife was too heavy, and he was afraid that she would fall. Xian Ringsu's face was extremely red with embarrassment, and she bit her thin lips tightly to prevent herself from making any sound. This stinky guy knows how to take advantage of himself. Call out. Seeing Suzanne let go of his arm, Xian Ringsu quickly got off his back and lightly landed on the ground. Then I'm going. Seeing the mist on the holy pillar platform, Suzanne was not surprised at all. This was the domain of Sea Fantasy Douluo. After saying something to Xian Ringsu, the wings behind his back suddenly flapped, and Suzanne plunged into the fog. Snort. Seeing Suzanne go in, Xian Ringsu raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and her figure also shot out. However, she did not enter the mist, but came to the sky above the holy pillar platform. Since Heihuan Douluo is called Heihuan, she has always been a soul master who is good at spiritual power. In her current state, she can easily become a liability. However, that didn't mean she just stood on the shore and watched. On the other side, Suzanne had already entered the realm of Sea Fantasy Douluo. Seeing the fog in front of him begin to change, Suzanne felt as calm as still water. However, Suzanne didn't like having others explore his inner secrets. Golden light lit up from the top of Suzanne's head, and Suzanne's right eye also turned scarlet. Looking extremely terrifying, a golden red wave emanated from Suzanne's body, and in an instant, all the surrounding fog was shattered. A person and a pillar also appeared in front of Suzanne. How can it be? Sea Fantasy Douluo was also dumbfounded when he saw that his domain was easily cracked. As the guardian of the 7 sacred pillars, he has 2 realms, which can create illusions, and everything that happens in them can also be transformed into real harm. Very meow. He hasn't done anything yet, and the field has just been broken. This kind of spiritual power is useless to me. Even if my sister Bosaxi comes, I dare not say that a spiritual power can affect me. Seeing Heihu and Douluo's stunned look, Suzanne narrowed his eyes slightly and snorted domineeringly. As a spiritual soul master, Heihu Douluo also uses spiritual media to activate his domain. And his 3-eyed golden head soul bone itself has the function of immunity to mental power, plus the external soul bone of Xian, the strongest spiritual beast soul. To put it bluntly, he is now immune to all non-god level mental damage. Even if Bosaxi comes, he will definitely not be injured in a purely mental competition. There is nothing I can do. My mental defense is invincible. I just want to ask if you are angry. However, Suzanne's own mental power was only at the level of a titled Douluo. The defensive skills of the 2 soul bones were not purely his mental power after all. It's like, if you hold an iron spear, you can't say that your is so long. Ahem. Just a metaphor to sum up. The spiritual strength is the key for Suzanne to take the initiative to fight against the Sea Fantasy Douluo. But with the help of the evil eye, his mental power can also be actively improved on his own until he reaches the ultimate level of Douluo. An activating the evil eye's mental damage is Suzanne's most terrifying killer move. Boom. At this moment, fierce golden light shone in the sky, and a sacred aura enveloped Suzanne and Suzanne. Suzanne felt that his body was warm and filled with power. This girl is getting more and more disobedient. Seeing Xian Ringsu still using her martial soul avatar and angelic realm, Suzanne gritted his teeth and wished he could run up to hold her down and give her a tough lesson. Very meow. Do you understand the 3 obediences and the 4 virtues? He vowed to discuss this course with Xian Ringsu when he went back. If she didn't get up the next day, his last name would be Zu or Su, angel, realm. After Recovering from the shock, the sixth soul ring on the soles of Sea Fantasy Douluo's feet suddenly lit up, and a layer of blue ripples rippled from the body of the illusory snake. I saw that the angel realm seemed to be blocked by something, and the golden light could not enter Sea Fantasy Douluo at all. This is the sixth soul skill of Sea Fantasy Douluo, which can counter domain, illusion and other skills, so Suzanne asked Xian Rinxu not to participate in the battle. Her mental strength has been greatly damaged, and her field is not of much use, so she can just watch from the sidelines without causing any trouble. This is the martial spirit avatar in the angel realm. Do you really think you won't be able to get up the next day? Seeing Suzanne glaring at him angrily, with a mixture of love and hate in his eyes, full of heartache, Xian Rinxu's body trembled slightly. She pouted her little mouth indignantly, and came down from the sky honestly. The martial soul was then withdrawn into the body, and the golden light receded from the body. Xian Rinxu's face was colorless, and she looked very weak. I am also tired from playing today. Let's finish it quickly. After noticing Xian Rinxu's condition, Suzanne heaved a sigh of relief, and looked at Heiho and Douluo, becoming extremely serious, pressing his index finger and thumb on his forehead. Poseidon's light burst out from the trident mark. Seeing the Poseidon's light, silenced Douluo's heart suddenly trembled, and the soul power in his body seemed to be suppressed. On the holy pillar platform, two golden and blood red beams of light suddenly burst out from Suzanne's head. The two beams of light rotated and stirred, twisting like twists to form one body, turning into a dark golden color psychic attack. Sensing that powerful spiritual power, silenced Douluo's expression suddenly changed. Under the true body of Wuhan, the ninth soul ring on the soles of his feet lit up, and black light covered the illusory snake boom. A strong spiritual storm burst out from the giant snake's eyes, heading towards the dark golden tornado. For soul masters, the battle of spiritual power is the most terrifying. If you are not careful, you may be called an idiot. Even Hey Fantasy Douluo didn't show any mercy at this moment. It's a pity that he thought Suzanne was just an ordinary soul emperor, since he hadn't released his martial soul and soul ring. If you think so, you are totally wrong. What Suzanne was using at this moment was his most powerful external soul bone skill, the light of space and time. It has 3 layers of mysteries: time, space, and spirit. Once hit, the spirit and vitality will quickly decline. Emperor Xian was hit by this trick back then, and it took him 1,000 years to recover. This shows how terrifying it is. Boom. In just a blink of an eye, his spirit condensed into a substantial dark golden tornado, which completely defeated Sea Fantasy Douluo's mental storm, and a hissing sound pierced into his mind. Then, shrill shouts rang out from the Holy Pillar platform. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Sea Witch. Okay, just yell twice and it's done. The light of Poseidon will protect you. Just yell like a hammer. Seeing Sea Fantasy Douluo's ghostly roar, Suzanne wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and shouted angrily. The superposition of the light of Poseidon and the light of time and space can increase the power of the latter. At the same time, Suzanne also wanted to ensure the safety of Sea Fantasy Douluo. With the Poseidon's light, once the spiritual power in Sea Fantasy Douluo's body begins to be eliminated by time, the Poseidon's light will immediately resist the light of time and space. The power of the light of time and space exploded with his Soul Emperor's soul power. Suzanne didn't know how powerful it was, so he made this move. Well, feeling that his mental power was receding, Heiho and Douluo looked at his shriveled and wrinkled skin that was also recovering, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was okay. He thought he would be erased by the power of time. You win. Blue light burst out from Sea Fantasy Douluo's body, and Sea Fantasy Douluo shook his head helplessly. The holy pillar was triggered by Sea Fantasy Douluo, and the golden light disappeared. At the same time, a beam of light fell between Suzanne and Suzanne's foreheads, symbolizing victory at this holy pillar. Alas. Seeing Suzanne and the others leaving, Hei Hu and Dao sighed helplessly, as if his heart was bleeding. The blow just now irreversibly wiped out 10% of his body's vitality in almost an instant, and it also included the mental power in his body. If the Poseidon's light transformation hadn't been activated in time, I'm afraid he would have been completely wiped out by the light of time and space. And his spirit would have collapsed. When he thought of that irresistible force of destruction, Hei Hu and Douluo felt palpitations and regrets in his heart. I'm afraid he won't be able to recover from the loss in this assessment within a few years. It's such a loss of blood, without continuing to participate in the assessment. Since there were still 2 days left, Suzanne took Xian Ringsu and went back directly. "Ah, you okay?" Noticing the bright red corners of Suzanne's mouth, Xian Ringsu held his arm and asked worriedly, "It's nothing, it's just that the soul power is consumed too much." Xian shook his head and immediately took out a milk bottle to restore his soul power. The attack just now consumed so much soul power that even Suzanne, a soul emperor with his cultivation level, could not withstand it. The light of time and space requires the continuous activation of 3 major mysteries, and it is also the soul bone of the evil eye tyrant who is nearly 800,000 years old at the moment when it was used. In order to ensure the powerful attack power, Suzanne felt that his soul power was about to be drained. Although soul bones have powerful skills, they require soul power to be converted, which has a big drawback. Just like the evil eye, Suzanne needs to use his soul power to transform into spiritual power, rather than his body's spiritual power bursting out again through his soul bones. So he consumes his soul power in this way. With Soul Emperor Suzanne's cultivation level, even activating the soul bone requires about 1/3 of the soul power, let alone organizing a powerful spiritual attack. However, this also proves the terror of the light of time and space. Even the title Douluo of the spiritual department has no chance of contending. It will be much easier for the 2 of them to face the remaining tests. "Suzanne, were you injured?" Seeing Xian Ringsu helping Suzanne back, Xiaobei immediately came up to him, his face looking a little anxious. "I'm fine." After waving her hands, Suzanne lay down on the chair. Seeing Xian Ringsu's pale face, she felt a little distressed. "Go and take a rest. Don't worry about me. Your face is really distressing," Suzanne reminded her warmly, stroking the side of Xian Ringsu's face. He could use a milk bottle to recover his soul power, but there was no way for his mental power. He could only rely on himself to recover slowly. Then, "Xiaobei, just watch him. I am going to rest." Nodding, Xian Ringsu was not pretentious. She knew her own situation well. There would be a battle tomorrow and she really needed to recover. Smiling at Suzanne, Xian Ringsu turned around and went back to the room, leaving only Xiaobei and Suzanne in the living room. "You'd better not come here to eat for food again. I'm just going to cook something for Zua to eat later." Looking at Xiaobei's innocent and beautiful face, Suzanne said leisurely, "Some people can rely on their reputation to make a living, but they like to take advantage of their wealth. What do you think this is? I'm not that greedy." Sticking out his tongue, Xiaobei retorted, then looked at Suzanne. "I heard that a new group of soul beasts has appeared in the sea recently, and the leader is a big guy. You mean Godzilla has adopted a younger brother?" Suzanne asked immediately with a slight frown. "Noob, look what you asked. You'd better take care of it, otherwise it will easily cause trouble. The sea itself is safe now, but I'm afraid of it." Xiaobei didn't go on. She had seen the strength of that big guy with her own eyes. Even the deep sea demonic whale king might not be able to defeat him, let alone other sea creatures. If he really develops a power, even if he doesn't cause trouble, the younger brothers below will be unreasonable if they have this backer. "When I finish the assessment the day after tomorrow, let's go to the sea and have a look." After thinking for a moment, Suzanne couldn't help but nodded. He had warned Godzilla, but he actually dared to act like this? The next day, Suzanne took Xian Ringsu to challenge Sea Ghost Douluo and Starfish Douluo. The strength of the 2 of them was average among the 7, so naturally they were no match for Suzanne and Xian Ringsu. Relying on the confinement of Xian Ringsu's angelic realm, Suzanne's powerful first-hand control skills left the 2 of them with almost no room to fight back. In order to reduce the pressure on the body, Suzanne did not continue to use the light of time and space, and purely used other soul control skills. With the opponent under control, he and Xian Rinxu jointly launched a fierce attack, and the two of them were almost invincible. Finally, the two came to the last stop of the day. The Sea Witch's holy pillar. Sea Witch Douluo is a mermaid, with slightly curly blue hair hanging down her head. Her skin is tender and smooth, and her smile looks gentle and refreshing. She is completely like a big sister who is inexperienced in the world. The position of the legs is occupied by a fishtail. The blue scales are shining in the sun. The sea witch is sitting on the edge of the holy pillar. The tail is slightly stirring the water of the sea. The scene is gentle and harmonious. You are finally here. I have been waiting here for a long time. Seeing Suzanne and the two approaching, the sea witch suddenly laughed happily. She looked cute and harmless to humans and animals. Oh, it turns out that you are husband and wife. You plan to get married when you go back, so I wish you a happy marriage in advance. After looking at Xian Rinxu, a bright light flashed in the sea witch's eyes and she couldn't help but speak. After finishing speaking, before the two of them could speak, the sea witch's voice sounded again. Look, I don't have any gifts to give, so why not just give you a song? Wait a minute. Seeing the sea witch lift the black flute, Suzanne shouted immediately. Chapter 245. Let's compete in music. What's wrong? Seeing Suzanne speak, the sea witch stopped slightly and looked at him curiously. Psychic attacks are useless to me. Even Sea Fantasy Douluo lost. How about this? Let's just compete in music. What do you think? Suzanne said with a smile. Comparing tunes? Hearing this, the sea witch was also stunned. This was the first time she heard such a novel comparison. Unfortunately, with the trident mark, she couldn't find out what Suzanne was thinking. However, Sea Fantasy Douluo also has illusions and mental powers, which are very similar to her abilities. Yesterday I heard that guy was harmed by Suzanne. Knowing that Suzanne's mental power was strong, the sea witch pondered slightly, and then said, how do you compare the music you mentioned? Sea Fantasy Douluo is in front of her. She doesn't want to suffer this. In this way, let's compete with whose music is better. We don't use soul power and it's just music. Suzanne replied. Suzanne never hits a woman. If he can solve a problem with his mouth, he doesn't need to use his fists. More than music? Are you serious? Hearing this, the sea witch looked at Suzanne in disbelief. Her martial soul was a flute. The mermaid clan has always been good at music. This is a bit bullying. I happen to know how to play the flute, so I can compete with my beautiful sister. As he said this, a jade flute appeared in Suzanne's hand. This was not just showing off, but he really knew how to play it, and he learned it from Yuxun. You are glib, but if you lose, don't blame me, sister, okay? The corners of her mouth were slightly raised, and her playful expression showed deep confidence in herself. The sea witch reminded her with a smile. Different music listeners have different perceptions, so it's hard to decide whether to win or lose. How about this? Let's compete with each other to see whoever is convinced first wins. What do you think? Suzanne couldn't help but ask. Oh, if I keep dissatisfied, won't you never win? The sea witch became more interested and blinked slyly, her blue eyes filled with a deep smile, as if she was planning something else. Musicians have always been noble and pure. I'm absolutely assured of this, beautiful sister. Suzanne immediately gave the sea witch a hat. Are you kidding me? You won't admit defeat. If you don't admit defeat later, I'll stand on my head and eat shit for you to see. Okay, let's compete on this. You go first. Hearing this, the sea witch's expression became meticulous, and there was no hint of laxity or frivolity. Good. Hearing this, Suzanne nodded, took out his phone from his pocket with a smile on his face. It's better than the flute, right? If you beat China's 5,000-year-old civilization, I'm really willing to admit defeat. I have nothing else to say. 30 seconds later, the sea witch's face changed drastically. A minute later, the sea witch subconsciously swallowed. 3 minutes later, her face turned purple and her body was trembling. By 10 minutes, there are 3 songs in total, which is enough to explain the difference. That's enough. I lost. You don't have to keep bragging. The sea witch immediately waved her hand and interrupted Suzanne hastily. She used to be very confident, but now she has completely lost it. Just admit defeat. Hearing this, Suzanne immediately put down the flute, but the sound of the flute was still playing. Okay, you actually cheated. Staring at Suzanne's cell phone, the sea witch suddenly became furious. My baby, can't he remember the music? I can't hear the difference in the intensity of the sound. Suzanne shouted angrily. The sea witch suddenly choked on her words. The two voices were one big and one small. It was indeed easy to distinguish them, if you think about it carefully. Hurry up, I'm in a hurry to go back and have a rest, so let's grind it out, Suzanne urged. Snort. With a cold snort, the sea witch glared at Suzanne angrily. Black light emitted from her body, and a beam of light disappeared from the sky again. I'll give you an MP3, so you can relax and listen to it yourself. After throwing an MP3 over, Suzanne handed over a manual, and left with Xian Ringsu. This thing has music? Looking at the box in her hand, the sea witch's eyes were full of surprise. When she thought that she had lost just now, and it was in the music ear, the sea witch suddenly became angry, and threw the MP3 directly. She doesn't need anything from that despicable guy. Bang! The MP3 hit the sacred pillar platform, and a gentle and ethereal voice suddenly sounded. The waves silently submerged the night deeply, spreading over the corner of the sky. The big fish swam through the gaps in the dream, staring at your sleeping silhouette. This song, the sea witch's eyes suddenly lit up, and she quickly picked it up. As she listened, a look of satisfaction slowly appeared on her face. This song is so nice. Early on the third day, Suzanne and the two came to the sea dragon's sacred pillar near the center of Poseidon Island. This is also the last battle, and also the most difficult battle. Their opponent was a level 95 Super Douluo, and his opponent's martial spirit was a sea dragon, a top-notch beast martial spirit comparable to the blue electric Tyrannosaurus. What made Suzanne even more uncomfortable was that the opponent's domain skill was actually demon breaking, which could break all domain skills. In other words, the weakening, confinement, and strengthening of Xian Ringsu's angel skills will no longer have any effect on the two of them. This is a real battle. Sea Dragon Douluo is a middle-aged man who looks young. His upper body is naked, and the muscles on his shoulders are like steel. His upper body is in the shape of an inverted triangle point. If this were in future generations, he would be a proper bodybuilding champion. You are really good at winning the recognition of the 6 guardians of the sacred pillar, but I'm afraid that you will not be able to pass this level so easily. There was no soul power fluctuation in his body. Seahorse Douluo looked like an ordinary person, with a gentle smile on his face, and not in a hurry. This kind of reserved and calm person is the truly terrifying person. Whether it was his character or his confidence in his own strength, Sea Dragon Douluo looked so impeccable, standing like a mountain in front of him. Kindness. The pretense is strong. We can't win 2 against 1. We can't live up to our reputation as seniors. Suzanne cupped his hands and replied. If the victory is really impossible, how can the 6 of them be convinced? He chuckled and shook his head. Sea Dragon Douluo would not take Suzanne's modesty seriously. He waved to the two of them and said, okay, no need to talk nonsense anymore. Let me see your strength. Call out. Knowing that it was the last battle, the two of them didn't waste any time. While leaping into the air, they were immediately possessed by their martial spirits. Xian Ringsu released her martial spirit avatar, and the bright golden light was like the sun rising in the sky, so dazzling that even Sea Dragon Douluo narrowed his eyes slightly. A burst of dark blue light surged out from the body, directly suppressing the golden light, leaving it only within the area of Suzanne and the two of them. Chapter 246 Fierce Battle. Sea Dragon Douluo. I'll cooperate with you, and hit him hard. His eyes narrowed slightly. Facing Sea Dragon Douluo, Suzanne didn't have a good countermeasure. He sent a message to Xian Ringsu, and Suzanne directly released the behemoth claws and rushed forward. 6 soul rings shone around him, especially the 3 outermost red soul rings, which were even more dazzling. Seeing Suzanne's attack, Xian Ringsu also raised her spirits, holding the Sun Divine Sword at Suzanne's side, preparing to flank Sea Dragon Douluo. Seeing that Suzanne and the two actually planned to fight head-on, Sea Dragon Douluo was also a little surprised. Didn't they rely on control skills to win? without any room for further thought. Seeing the two attacks coming, Sea Dragon Douluo immediately possessed his martial soul. Blue scales surged out from the body, covering the chest and extending towards the limbs. The claws were also covered with sharp short spear armor. The shadow of a blue dragon roared behind Sea Dragon Douluo. Point boom. Knowing that there was a huge physical difference between him and the titled Douluo, Xian directly used the 5th soul skill Holy Light Defense without hesitation. While the golden defensive shield wrapped around him, bright golden light erupted from Xian's arm, and his right hand was directly covered with a layer of golden armor. Especially Behemoth's claws shimmered with sharp golden light, looking extremely ferocious. The Key Blood Soul Ring uses the power of Key Blood, so Xian dared to boldly use 2 soul skills. Otherwise, he might not be able to support it for long if it were to be replaced by 200,000-year soul skills. When fighting Sea Dragon Douluo, Xian didn't believe that he would give him time to recover using a milk bottle. Feeling that his martial soul became violent and seemed to be filled with deep anger in his fear, Sea Dragon Douluo fixed his eyes on Xian's behemoth claws. Okay, just try how powerful this thing is. After concentrating his gaze, Sea Dragon Douluo's 2nd soul ring lit up, and the scales on his arms seemed to come to life, all standing up, and his 5 claws also lengthened slightly, wrapped in a layer of blue light. Boom. Xian's sharp claws rushed forward and fought with Sea Dragon Douluo in close combat. With a stabbing sound, the two people's claws brushed against each other, sparks flying, and the defensive light on Xian's arm dimmed slightly, as if it was about to be broken. It is a 100,000-year-old soul skill. With Xian's soul power, it is really difficult to face a titled Douluo. Seeing the scratches on his arm, and even blood spilling out, Sea Dragon Douluo's pupils shrank suddenly, and he was extremely shocked. Just such a slight collision, and he was actually injured? How did Sea Dragon Douluo know that this golden behemoth claw was the biggest nemesis for the dragon clan with strong defense? With 300,000-year-old soul rings in a row, plus the energy of a few soul bones, the age of Behemoth Claw is almost reaching the 100,000-year mark. Even if the real dragon comes, it can still leave wounds. Not to mention that Hailong is just a martial spirit. Aha. Seeing how powerful Behemoth's claws were, Xian did not hesitate and clawed at Sea Dragon Douluo's chest with his backhand. The latter immediately bent over and bent his legs backwards, with his entire back almost touching the ground. Placing his left hand on the ground to catch the force from his waist, Sea Dragon Douluo turned over and kicked Xian at the same time. Aha! Even with the golden light protecting his body, Xian still felt a huge force coming at him. His whole body was pushed back, and his chest felt a little tight and painful. Golden light flashed, and a dangerous aura came. Sea Dragon Douluo subconsciously stretched out his hand to resist. With a clang, the Sun Divine Sword directly hit Sea Dragon Douluo's scaly arm. The other end of the sword was none other than Xian. Seeing the black scale shield on Sea Dragon Douluo's arm, Xian was also a little disappointed. She didn't expect Sea Dragon Douluo to react so quickly. The Sun Divine Sword was directly blocked by Sea Dragon Douluo's 5th soul skill. Knowing that Xian and the two were attacking together, Sea Dragon Douluo had already reserved this hand. After all, the Sun Divine Sword is not the Behemoth Claw. Even though Xian also used the martial spirit avatar, and it was also the 5th soul skill, the difference in levels still made Xian's attack miss. Boom. Sensing something was wrong, Sea Dragon Douluo was frightened in his heart and punched the Sun Divine Sword. Xian was also directly knocked back. The soul power of angels can purify soul power, which is indeed extraordinary as rumored. Looking at Xian, Sea Dragon Douluo said with admiration, his face showing no trace of anger. Even though Wuhan Palace had invaded Poseidon Island, this was just an assessment and had nothing to do with anything else. You flatter me. Xian's expression was cold, looking a little inhumane, and the sun sword in his hand suddenly flickered, pulling the sun's energy down. The Sun God Sword, whose metal blade was originally glowing with golden light, suddenly turned into a golden crystal clear and shining. Sensing the threat from the Sun God Sword, Sea Dragon Douluo directly released his Soul Beast true form, and a huge blue dragon burst out from his body, circling and roaring around his body. The dragon scales on the giant dragon's body were clearly visible, protruding outward like sharp spikes. The intoxicating aura made Suzanne and his wife feel chills in their hearts and their bodies tensed up. Wedi gave Xian Rinxu a suggestive look, and the latter immediately understood. Wedi stepped forward, as if he wanted to resist Sea Dragon Douluo alone. Suddenly, Xian Rinxu rose into the sky, and the angelic realm was released. The fierce golden light suppressed the blue light that filled Sea Dragon Douluo's body. I forgot to tell you, I also own a domain. Its name is Breaking Demon. Seeing Xian Rinxu using the angel domain, Sea Dragon Douluo was unhurried, and blue-white soft air burst out from the soles of his feet. There doesn't seem to be any threat, but Xian Rinxu's angelic realm has been broken up. All spirits coexist. At this moment, a pure white light suddenly emerged from Suzanne's body point. As soon as the golden light dissipated, Sea Dragon Douluo didn't react at all, and was directly hit by the white light point. Seeing this scene, Suzanne was immediately happy. He asked Xian Rinxu to use the angel domain, just to cover up his use of soul skills. 30 seconds. Attack with all your strength. With a loud shout, Suzanne's figure shot out first. This symbiosis of all spirits can prevent Sea Dragon Douluo from using his offensive soul skills, which means that within 30 seconds, he can only dodge and defend. This is definitely their best chance. Hearing Suzanne's words, Xian Rinxu immediately stepped forward to greet him, the sun sword shining brightly in his hand. Special soul skills. Seeing that his 5 soul rings, including the 8th and 9th soul rings, were deemed irrelevant, Sea Dragon Douluo was also very surprised. He did not expect that there were such limited soul skills. If he were at the same level, he would almost be beaten down. It's a pity that no matter how you say it, he is still a titled Douluo. It's too naive to want to break through his defense. The 5th soul skill was released again, and the black pointed armor was like a shield surrounding Sea Dragon Douluo. He did not choose to attack. Sea Dragon Douluo knew that this soul skill only lasted 30 seconds. Chapter 247. The 5th test is over. Suzanne felt that it was a bit overwhelming to use 2 5th soul skills in a row, and they were both a 100,000-year soul skill and a key and blood soul skill. In his current state, if he cannot defeat Sea Dragon Douluo within a few minutes, I'm afraid that this battle will come to an end. The 5th soul skill of Sea Dragon Douluo's martial soul is still a 10,000-year soul skill. If he is really allowed to complete the defense, the attack power of the two of them will be greatly reduced. At this thought, Suzanne also gave up. The 6th soul ring on the sole of his foot lit up, and a cold white light flashed in the blood red right pupil. Suddenly, a blood white killing energy burst out from Suzanne's eyes, directly passing through the scale shield forming in front of Sea Dragon Douluo. Suddenly, Sea Dragon Douluo's pupils shrank. Suddenly, white light entered his body, and he felt everything stopped. Even the 5th soul skill that was originally released suddenly stopped, and all the scale shields in front of him were destroyed. Evil Eye Gaze is another skill of Evil Eye, which can make the Soul Master's consciousness confused, and his body in a state of stiffness, and coupled with the 8 Anisis Grass soul skill Frozen Eye, the Evil Eye freezing formed by the superposition of the 2 soul skills can even freeze the Soul Master's consciousness, making him completely unable to resist. This is like a messy hemp rope. It is already very difficult to sort out, and then it is frozen. Unless one can break through the Frozen Eye and then the Evil Eye Gaze, it will be impossible to wake up. PFFT. Even Suzanne couldn't bear the exertion of such a high intensity soul skill. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing the ground of the holy pillar platform red. Suzanne also knelt on the sacred pillar platform. His face was as white as a ghost, and he looked like he was seriously ill. Don't worry about me. Attack with all your strength. Seeing Xian Rinxu looking over worriedly, Suzanne looked ferocious and shouted quickly. Unlike the symbiosis of all spirits, which ignores the 30 seconds of Soul Master level, this Evil Eye Freeze can only trap Sea Dragon Douluo for 5 seconds. Once it is missed, it will be difficult to defeat him, but, gritting her teeth, the 5th and 6th soul rings on Xian Rinxu's body lit up again, and in an instant, a huge long sword appeared in Xian Rinxu's hand. The Holy Sword and the Sword of Judgment, the 2 major soul skills are superimposed at the same time. Xian Rinxu did not hold back. and the giant sword turned into a stream of light and flew directly towards Sea Dragon Douluo. Sea Dragon Douluo's chest, which was protected by sea dragon scales, was directly penetrated. Blood spurted out from his chest, and the deep blood hole looked chilling. Even though there is no superposition of energy from the angel realm, Xian Rinxu's attack power is no less than that of a titled Douluo, as the 5th soul skill and the 6th soul skill are used simultaneously in Wuhan's true body point without any defensive soul skills, relying only on the defensive power of the martial soul's true body. How could Sea Dragon Douluo's body withstand this attack? PFFT. The time when the evil eye was frozen passed, and a sharp pain hit him. Sea Dragon Douluo spit out a mouthful of blood, and his body fell from the sky point gurgling. The huge hole in his chest continued to flow out blood. Sea Dragon Douluo quickly used his 6th soul skill, and saw that the blood hole in his chest healed quickly, leaving only a patch of blood red in the blink of an eye. My darn thing. Seeing that Sea Dragon Douluo actually had the ability to heal, Suzanne almost cursed. Why didn't this original work be written? Isn't this a trap for people who travel through time? I lost. I don't have to keep fighting. Just when Suzanne was about to get up and give Sea Dragon Douluo another big mouth, Sea Dragon Douluo's voice suddenly rang out. Suzanne blinked and looked at Sea Dragon Douluo with a confused expression. The latter also looked at him, without any anger, but with a faint smile. Your soul control skills are indeed powerful. No wonder they were all defeated by you. I lost this competition. That's right. Sea Dragon Douluo had indeed lost. If Xian Rinxu's attack just now had been aimed at his heart, he would probably be dead by now. The 5th test is to challenge the titled Douluo, and both of them passed the test. The assessment is approved by 7 titled Douluo. The reward is multiplied by 2, the Poseidon affinity is increased by 10%, and the total affinity is 50%. As the golden light broke into his forehead, Suzanne's trident mark also changed, turning into dark gold. As for Xian Rinxu, her soul power has been upgraded by 1 level, reaching level 73. Each soul ring rewards 2000 years. As a result, her soul ring turned purple, black, red, and her 4th soul ring also became a 10,000 year soul ring. You two have to be careful in the 6th test. Although it's just a stick of incense, our 7 titled Douluo are not vegetarians. After receiving the content of the 6th test, Sea Dragon Douluo reminded him kindly, with a touch of anger in his eyes, as if he wanted to regain his place. We'll wait. Xian Rinxu replied, not to be outdone, then came to Suzanne's side, took out a handkerchief, and wiped the bloodstains at the corners of his mouth. Her movements as gentle as water, and her eyes were filled with distress. Carry me back. Suzanne blinked and begged with a smile. You're not afraid of being embarrassed, Xian Rinxu replied angrily, but Xian Rinxu still bent down slightly, knowing that Suzanne never cared about these face issues. I knew you, my wife, are the best. Seeing this, Suzanne grabbed Xian Rinxu's slender snow neck and hung her whole figure up like a hanger. How can a man let a woman carry it? Pouring her lips resentfully, Xian Rinxu still held onto Suzanne's legs, especially when she felt something burping against her. Her face slowly turned red. This young couple is really sigh. Seeing Xian Rinxu leaving with Suzanne on his back, Seahorse Douluo suddenly felt a million points of violence in his heart. Not only was he defeated, but he also had to bear the show of affection between two people. This is what humans do. Thinking of his injuries, Sea Dragon Douluo slowly sat down cross-legged, caught the energy of the holy pillar, and began to recover from his injuries. On the other side, Suzanne was carried by Xian Rinxu on the road to Poseidon Island. Suzanne liked pleasure, but Xian Rinxu was shy and tense, fixing his body tightly and not daring to let him move. If you keep doing this, I'll throw you down. Sensing Suzanne's little move, Xian Rinxu's character blushed and said angrily, let's go back to the bedroom and rest for a while, okay? After rubbing Xian Rinxu's ear, Suzanne's eyes were full of expectation and her coquettish tone was like that of a child. The heat hit her, and Xian Rinxu felt her ears itching herself unbearably, especially the pain on her back. Her body seemed to be on fire, and she bit her pink lips to prevent from making any sound. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as your promise. Seeing Qian Rinxu's face flushed, the corners of Suzanne's mouth raised slightly, and she felt the animal blood in her body was churning, as if she couldn't control it. Back at the villa, just when Suzanne thought Qian Rinxu would fulfill her promise, I saw her throw herself off, then blushed and hurried into the bathroom. Suzanne, is this a hint? Chapter 248 Xian Meng Ice Silkworm. What kind of thing is holding onto a stick of incense in the hands of 7 titled Douluo? This is nothing at all. The time is also set for a week later, so Suzanne has plenty of time to make love with Qian Rinxu. Nonsense. There is plenty of time to adjust your physical condition. 3 days later, after recovering her health, Suzanne rode Xiao Bei out to sea. I heard that the sea has become increasingly unstable recently, and Godzilla seems to be making big moves. Suzanne needs to go and take a look. I knew this big guy was not a fuel efficient light bulb. If I had known, I wouldn't have let him out for a walk. Xiao Bei took Suzanne to an island. Before he got close to the coast, he could see a huge body lying on the ground with his head facing the coast. There are still some huge spirit beasts cruising around the coast. Judging from the posture of this little brother, there may be dozens of 10,000-year spirit beasts. Suzanne, the 10 evils really lack a place for you. Roar. Seeing the eyeless soul approaching beast, Xiao Bei roared, and the energy belonging to the 100,000-year soul beast suddenly burst out, scaring them all away, and Godzilla on the coast also woke up. There is a white figure above Godzilla's head. It is a silkworm baby, more than 7 meters long. The whole body is white jade, crystal clear, and has a pair of small golden eyes. The most peculiar thing is that he has 9 golden halos on his body, and the 10th halo is faintly visible. Brother, here comes another blind one. It looks like she is still a 100,000-year-old soul beast. We are short of such a little brother. Get her quickly. The calf patted Godzilla's big head. Xian Meng Binken's face was full of excitement, and his eyes almost burst into laughter. The little brother who came to your door. Wow. As expected, he, Xian Meng Bing Silkworm, was born to be the big brother. Brother, why don't you move? After returning to his senses slightly, Xian Meng Bingxi was stunned when he saw Godzilla standing up straight but staying motionless, and then started to urge him. Suddenly, golden light burst out from Suzanne's forehead, and all the 10,000-year soul beasts stayed in place in fear, not daring to move any further. Suzanne quickly flew into the sky and came to Godzilla. Godzilla lowered his head guiltily, not daring to look at Suzanne. Suzanne ignored him and stared blankly at Xian Meng Bingxi, with an extremely harmonious smile on his face. Being stared at by Suzanne, Xian Meng Bingken shrank suddenly, and a chill suddenly emerged. I'm telling you, you'd better not come here. I am a male and a soul beast with an honest nature. We don't get along. Xian Meng. Iceworm hid slightly behind Godzilla's bulge and said warily, million-year-old soul beast. Xian Meng Ice Silkworm. Staring at Xian Meng Binken, Suzanne spoke every word. The former just felt like his heart was shaking. Damn it. Brother is exposed. Looking at Godzilla at his feet, Xian Meng Iceworm seemed to realize something, and a milky white spiritual power suddenly rushed towards Suzanne. Immediately, he jumped down from Godzilla's head and began to escape towards the sea. However, just after lying on the ice and swimming for a while, Xian Meng Ice Silkworm realized something was wrong. Very meow. It seems to be floating. Looking at the water floating in the air below her, Xian Meng Bingshan felt very bad inside, especially the sound from behind, which made her feel tight. You keep swimming. The more you struggle, the more interesting it becomes to me. Are you okay? Seeing that Suzanne was okay despite being hit by his own mental shock, Xian Meng Binken was also stunned, but then started to sense it. My dear, your mental power is so strong. Sensing Suzanne's mental power, Xian Meng Bingxi was immediately shocked. Especially in Suzanne's right eye, there seemed to be a spiritual power that was no less than his own, which made his heart even colder. It doesn't matter if he can't beat him, he can't even match his opponent's mental strength. This is totally not giving Brother Meng any way to survive. Boss, do you need a younger brother? We have something to discuss. Blinking her innocent little eyes, Xian Meng Binken's flattering voice suddenly sounded, making Suzanne's mouth twitch. Damn it, if you tell me this guy is a 100,000-year-old soul beast, I won't believe it. As for the million-year-old soul beast, that is really embarrassing for this term. Besides eating and sleeping, what else can you do besides being lucky enough to pick up cold marrow? So, Xian snorted back, his words full of contempt. Xian Meng Bingsi, this is a good question. Let me think about it. No, how do you know this? Xian Meng Bingken asked in shock. The smile on Suzanne's lips became even stronger. I also know that, if you didn't rely on your own mental power to scare people, you wouldn't even be able to defeat a 10,000-year-old soul beast. Xian Meng Bingsi, no matter how hard it is, don't tear it apart. If you want me to be killed or chopped into pieces, please give me a happy life. I will still be a good man after 18 years. Taking a deep breath, Xian Meng Bingsi was completely desperate. He kicked off his legs and started to turn over like a turtle. Very meow. It was okay to be hunted in the far north, but I finally drifted from the ocean to the south and met Godzilla, who was not very mentally strong. I originally thought that the two of them could conquer their own territory by combining their swords. Who knew that within 7 days, the car would overturn? MMP, brother, don't run away anymore. Do whatever you want. Oh, you are quite courageous. Seeing Xian Meng Bingken like this, Suzanne couldn't help but smile, and the former couldn't help but smile, flashing in his eyes when he heard this. However, next, Suzanne's actions made him despair again. With a flash of cold light, Suzanne pulled out a long sword. I heard that ice silkworms are extremely effective and are a rare treasure, but I don't know how they taste. Brother, I was wrong. Please don't kill me, okay? I have an elder and a younger one. I haven't lived enough in this life, and I don't want to die. Turning over, Xian Meng Bingken rubbed Suzanne's leg pitifully and begged for mercy. That's pretty much it. Knowing Xian Meng Bingken's personality, Suzanne couldn't help but nodded. After putting Godzilla away, to prevent him from causing trouble again, Suzanne prepared to take Xian Meng Iceworm back. It smells so good seeing Suzanne come back with a silkworm baby. Xiaobei couldn't help but swallow his saliva. The smell on the other person's body was so intoxicating. 100,000-year transformed soul beast. Beauty, don't stare at me like this, I will be shy. Sensing the aura of the sub-soul beast on Xiaobei's body, Xian Meng Bingken's heart suddenly tightened, and she replied with a guilty conscience. Are you a million-year-old soul beast? Xiaobei seemed to have noticed something was wrong. His pupils shrank suddenly, and he asked in surprise. Xian Meng Bingsi, I'm crazy. You are all monsters. You can recognize them. Ahem. There's still 3,000 years to go. Not yet. Xian Meng Bingken waved her arms arrogantly while observing Suzanne's reaction. Seeing his unwavering eyes, she couldn't help but breathed a sigh of relief. Note, Xian Meng Ice Silkworm has not been in the Stardow forest all the time, but only stayed for 10,000 years. According to the dialogue in the original book, it was imprisoned in the Stardow forest for nearly 10,000 years. Considering the time point, it was about this time that it left the extreme north. What came down from the ground was not written blindly by me. Chapter 249. Use tricks to pass the 6 exams. Poseidon Mountain. In front of Poseidon Temple Point, it's steaming here, and a fierce fight is going on. Yo. Ho ho ho, brother Meng, I can't do it anymore. If I continue like this, I will die sooner or later. On the dining table, Xian Meng Ice Silkworm turned into the size of a fist, lying on the plate with a swollen belly. Its crystal clear appearance was full of oil stains, but he didn't care at all. This soul beast can be considered a living treasure, which is quite rare. Looking at Xian Meng Iceworm, Bosaxi smiled slightly. She had seen many soul beasts, especially sea soul beasts. She was not absolutely sure that she could win against million-year-old soul beasts, such as the deep-sea demonic whale king. And this guy doesn't have the strength that a million-year-old soul beast should have. Even this temperament has Suzanne's shameless energy, which can be regarded as a kindred spirit. It's really strange. A soul beast that can only eat and sleep. He can be regarded as the #1 beast in the soul beast world. Suzanne muttered in reply, holding a lobster in his hand. The delicious shrimp meat was so mouth-watering. Hearing the blows from Suzanne and the others, Xian Mengbinken's mouth twitched slightly, but he did not dare to refute. Both of them are big bosses that it can't afford to offend. He can't afford to offend them. After wandering in the sea for so many years, Xian Meng Iceworm naturally knew Poseidon Island, what kind of land it was, and who Bosexy was. Don't say that, but this little guy is quite cute, and it seems like a good pet. If Suzanne and Bosexy trampled on his dignity as a soul beast, then Qian Rinxu's words were a complete insult to his dignity as a million-year-old soul beast. Pet. Brother Meng, a million-year-old soul beast, will be your pet. I hiccup, unable to help but burp. Xian Mengbinken rubbed his belly several times and directly started lying in corpse mode. Do whatever you like. Brother Meng can't do it anyway, even if he wants to kill me. Brother Meng, I don't want to move. Looking at Xian Mengbinken's naive appearance, the three of them couldn't help but laugh. If you pass the 6th test through such tricks, I'm afraid the 7th test will be more difficult. You'd better be mentally prepared. Tasting the food made by Suzanne, Bosexy couldn't help but become greedy, but she couldn't help but remind her when it was time to do so. I didn't say you couldn't hide here. Besides, I'm not staying in Poseidon Temple. I'll find it after a little searching, Suzanne defended. That's right. He is currently participating in the 6th assessment and is hiding in the Poseidon Temple, a high place on the entire island. From the beginning of the challenge, Suzanne used the formation to evacuate the battle area, and while they were leaving, he returned to Poseidon Temple. Sea Dragon Douluo and the others do not dare to extend their mental power exploration here unless they see him with their eyesight. Otherwise, the entire Poseidon Island is nearly a few hundred miles in radius. They can search wherever they like. There is no other way. After reading the 36 stratagems a little, I need to use my brain better. If you find it, what can they do to you, Bo? Sexy smiled helplessly. With the formations around here, let alone them, even if I want to rush in, I'm afraid it will take a lot of effort. Hey, hearing this, Suzanne also laughed modestly, just waving his hand and saying, where is that? By the way, sister, you won't let me draw the trident in our 7th test, right? Thinking of the next step, Suzanne blinked and asked curiously, if this were to be done purely by the Soul Master's means, with his current strength, even if he had to use all his strength, it would be impossible. 108,000 catties. At that time, Tangson had a lot of Soul Douluo strength, soul bones, dual domains, and Ningrangrang's 80% increase in all aspects, and he was almost half useless. Even though he has the bloodline of Golden Behemoth, he knows that there is no possibility for him to pull out the trident now. This is not that he is belittling himself, but a clear understanding of his true strength. Of course, cheating is another matter. Hearing Suzanne's question, Bosexy was also very surprised, but then shook her head. Even I can't reveal the inside story of the 9th Poseidon test. You will know after you pass the 6th test. Hey. Spoiler failed. Seeing Bosexy's tight mouth, Ruxian shook her head helplessly. If he fails the exam, don't blame him for leaving without leveling up. Anyway, Qian Rinxu is now a soul saint, so at worst, he will find another god to level up again. After a while, Sea Dragon Douluo and the others finally came. However, facing the formations around the Poseidon Temple, even if the 7 people worked together, they could only break through a few formations. If you want to completely break through, the assessment has been over for a long time. Opportunistically, the assessment reward is reduced by half. The Poseidon affinity is 10%, and the total affinity is 60%. Even though the reward was halved, Qian Rinxu still gained first level soul power, and all soul rings were increased by 1,500 years. Similarly, Suzanne also got the content of the 7th test, as Suzanne thought that the 7th test was not about the trident at all. However, when he saw the above content clearly, Suzanne had the urge to curse. Because the 6th test was successfully passed, the difficulty of the 7th test was increased. Poseidon's 7th test was blessed by Poseidon. In the name of Poseidon, all levels of Soul Masters on Poseidon Island will be raised to the first level of soul power for 1 month, except for Bosexy, MMP. Poseidon You want to expand Poseidon Island? Are you crazy? Want me to increase the soul power of 9 people to the first level? Among them are Contrab entitled Douluo. Are these things done by humans? If his soul power were improved, wouldn't he add it to himself? If you can't afford to offend, I will immediately announce my retreat. Ahem. Noticing that something was wrong with Suzanne's expression, Xian thought for a moment and realized that he had gone astray, so she quickly pushed him confused. What's wrong? Suzanne looked at Xian point with a knowing smile. Xian immediately approached Suzanne's ear and whispered quietly, ha ha ha. She is indeed my wife. She is as smart as me. Xian's pupils shrank suddenly and he kissed her in surprise with a silly smile on his face. It's so dirty with oil stains all over her face. Xian glared at Suzanne angrily, but there was a hint of joy in her eyes. Both sexy. If you show affection again, I will overturn the table. On the side, Sea Dragon Douluo was depressed when he suddenly received the contents of the 7th test and was immediately overjoyed. Damn it, they also have benefits. Sea Dragon Douluo was the first to come over and express his goodwill. Lord Suzanne, I have been at level 95 for many years. Why don't you consider me? 6. People, your moral integrity is lost. I am sorry, you were excluded first. Seeing hair long, Suzanne passed immediately. A super Douluo has improved so much. PFFT. Seeing Hairlong's dark expression, the other 6 people immediately laughed, but the internal fight also became more fierce. 6. Grown men have the nerve to compete with a girl like me. From now on the Lun family roll. Amidst the thunder, 5 pairs of eyes swept over her, and the sea witch suddenly fell silent. Chapter 250. If you fail the test, run away. The 7th test, Poseidon's Blessing. The Soul Masters of Sulking and below on the island basically don't need to worry about Suzanne. After all, among the 2000 people, there will always be someone who will break through this month and just throw a set of simple techniques by himself. As for the Soul Emperor and Soul Saint levels, just give them cough medicine, since the immortal products are useless to them anyway. Although it seemed a bit wasted, it didn't hurt. He got it back from Liang Yan anyway. As for Contrab entitled Douluo, just waste 2 cultivation experience cards. What? Why don't Soul Emperor and Soul Saint use cultivation experience cards? Sorry, he only has Soul Douluo and titled Douluo experience cards left here. Do you think it's irritating or not? You are a liar who deceived Lord Poseidon. The sea witch's face turned red, and she followed Suzanne closely, holding her black flute tightly in her hand, with the intention of rushing forward and smashing Suzanne's head. Originally, she thought it was a great blessing that Suzanne chose her after all. She has been at level 91 for some years. If she can break through to level 92, her strength can be improved. Unexpectedly, this effect only lasted a few minutes. She thought she had really achieved a breakthrough. What a fool. Mom, cheating on my feelings. Forget it. He was blatantly deceiving Lord Poseidon, and Lord Poseidon didn't realize it yet, so he just let the 2 of them pass. I'm in trouble. How did I deceive the Poseidon? It's obvious that you can't control that powerful soul power and your level has dropped. What does it matter to me? Xian argued indignantly, with such an arrogant expression that the sea witch wanted to smash his head. MMP. I can't control it. When I broke through the titled Douluo, you were still a tadpole. I have been practicing as a titled Douluo for longer than you have lived. I can't control level 92 soul power. Can your nonsense be more obvious? Don't be angry with her. Xian tugged on Suzanne's clothes and knew she was in the wrong. This idea was hers, and it was indeed very sad, but there was nothing we could do about it. After all, if the title Douluo wants to advance to the next level, it is impossible without decades of hard training. They only have 1 month. The 7th test has passed. It's time for us to go back. Holding Xian's arm, Suzanne reminded him with a spring breeze-like smile on his face. Hearing this, Xian's face turned red, and she lowered her head in shame. She naturally knew what Suzanne meant. After returning home, it was time for her to formally show off her cards and become his princess with peace of mind. What if Queen Mother and the others don't agree? However, Xian is still a little worried when thinking about Zuyi, Nangongling and the others. After all, the relationship between Wuhan Palace and Xiandao Empire. Just don't let them know. In a few years, you can take your son back. Spit. Before Suzanne finished speaking, Qian Ringsu pushed him out and almost fell to the side of the road. Damn it. Don't I want to lose face? Immediately turning around, Suzanne put her arms around Qian Ringsu's waist. Seeing that her face was as red as dripping blood, she couldn't help but kiss her. If you don't want a son, it's good to have a daughter. I won't favor sons over daughters. If you say that again, I will tear your mouth apart. Upon hearing these words, Qian Ringsu was even more embarrassed. She was not even 18 years old yet, so she could not stand these words. She felt like her chest was pounding wildly, as if she was about to be jumped out at any time. You're not allowed to use your hands or feet. You can tear me apart with your mouth and I won't resist. How about that? Leaning on Qian Ringsu's shoulder like a lazy cat, Suzanne said confidently. Goodbye. Excuse me, I felt goosebumps rising, and the sea witch flew away as she spoke. It's time to give the two of them a blessing. It's called showing affection and dying quickly. Alas. Once upon a time, there was a true love in front of the two of us, but she didn't know how to cherish it. Until hundreds of thousands of years passed, I don't know what happened to her. Seeing the loving appearance of Suzanne and Qian Ringsu, Xian Mengbinken was also very moved. Looking back on that year, he had loved the girl deeply. It's a pity that the other party is greedy for his body and wants to eat him. Woohoo. Relationships are so difficult. After passing the 7 Poseidon exams, Suzanne and the two can now freely enter and leave Poseidon Island. As for the 8th test, as Suzanne expected, Poseidon, who knew that he had been fooled, was extremely angry and actually wanted the two of them to fight Bosaixi. Moreover, Bosaixi could only use Soul Master methods, and there were no restrictions. To put it bluntly, this was simply suicide. However, the time is within 2 years, which is somewhat reasonable. It's a pity that Suzanne has no such thoughts. After staying on the island for another 2 days, Suzanne found Bosaixi. The two of us are planning to leave Poseidon Island. We came here specifically to say goodbye today. Looking at Bosaixi, Suzanne seemed to see the shadow of Nangangling. Even though he has a mobile phone to contact him, he hasn't been back for 2 years, so it's time to go back and have a look in these 8 Poseidon exams. If you two don't have titled Douluo level cultivation, I'm afraid there's no chance of winning. It's also my fault that you were opportunistic in the first 2 exams. Bosaixi also felt a little disappointed. The only person on Poseidon Island who could ignore her status as a great enshrined person might be Suzanne. Although the other party was generous and shameless in calling her sister, she brought a lot of human touch to her. Now, he is leaving too. Time flies so fast. Even if you have a cultivation of a titled Douluo, I may not be able to defeat you. Besides, I have no intention of inheriting the position of Secret. If I come back to see you from now on, I am afraid I'll have to break into Poseidon Island. Under Bosaix's astonished gaze, Suzanne pointed a finger and saw that the red mark on Qian Ringsu's forehead was taken away by Suzanne and returned to the Poseidon temple, and the mark on his body also disappeared. Seeing this scene, Bosaixi was stunned. The assessment mark could actually be peeled off, and it was filled with the spiritual power and faith of the Poseidon. Not to mention titled Douluo, even she couldn't do it. Now, you know why during the assessment, it is specially noted that the Spirit Master's fighting method should be used, right? Xian smiled at Bosaixi and watched the Poseidon's light coming towards him without any panic at all. Don't make silly sacrifices in the future. Poseidon just wants to find a successor and live happily on his own. It's not worth it. This is a little potion of immortality that will make you immortal. Okay, it's time for me to retreat. This old man, Poseidon, is too angry. It's time for the sea to cool him down. After throwing down a bottle of potion of immortality at Bosaixi, Suzanne hugged Qian Ringsu and moved directly to leave the boundary of Poseidon Island. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.